Good evening and welcome. It is great to see so many people here tonight. Thank you for coming. It's awesome. I'm going to call to order the Monday, July the 8th, 2024, City of Clemson Planning Commission meeting. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the city's YouTube channel. Additionally, if you're hearing impaired or need assisted listening devices, you can come over here and Aaron or Kelly can help you with that if you need that, and we would be glad to do that. I'd like to start out by telling you that the Planning Commission is a volunteer committee. It's appointed by City Council, and it serves as an advisory board in the planning and development of the city. We're not employees of the city, and at this time, I'd love to introduce the commissioners so y'all know who's who. Commissioner Carranza, Commissioner Rice, Commissioner Crowley, Commissioner Thaxton, Commissioner Burton, and Ms. Hyatt could not be here tonight. Commissioner Hyatt cannot be here tonight, and I'm Herb Tyler. I am the chair for this year of the Planning Commission. So we do have a quorum here. In addition, I'd like to introduce to you guys who you may not know or you may know, but I think it's very important. Our city administrative staff from the planning department. The head of the entire department is Mr. Nathan Woods. And then we have Art Holbrooks, head of planning. We have Aaron Tookoff, he's been our computer person, and Kelly Roach. So, as we get ready to start today, I know there are a lot of articles, a lot of things out there, and so one of the things that I wanted to go through, and since we have so many people here, is the South Carolina legislature dictates what a comprehensive plan is. And the reason that I bring this up today is there's been a lot of confusion and a lot of things. So if you take a look at Title VI, Local Government, Comprehensive Plan Enabling Act, it gives the ability for a local planning commission to be established, which the city of Clemson did do that. They prepare and revise periodically different plans and programs for development, prepare and recommend for adoption to the appropriate governing body, which here would be City Council. Zoning ordinance to include zoning district maps and appropriate revisions. We're involved in that. But we also have the ability to have a great zoning administrator, and I should introduce him, Jacob Peabody. I apologize for that, who is our zoning administrator. And to Nathan and to Art, who is our planner. And there are a lot of different things. So I would encourage you to look at that. But what I would tell you in the comprehensive plan, we're under that, and your voice is needed, and it's being heard. We have been sending this out. I think we had 242 responses to the survey, but if you haven't and you need to send some information, please send that in, because it's very important. This is all our community together, and it's very important. But the basic planning process must include these things. And this is what's important. It must include existing conditions, all of them. It must include a statement of needs and goals, implementation strategies with timeframes. But a local plan must include, but not limited to these elements: population element, economic development element, a natural resource element, a cultural resource element, community facilities element, a housing element, a land use element, a transportation element, a priority investment element, a resiliency element. All planning elements must be an expression of ultimately the recommendations go forth based on these things. So I would tell you that the more that people understand about that, the better. But there's one element that people don't talk about And I found an article on that because I noticed some confusion, particularly at the last city council meeting amongst people. And they asked some questions, and it is a zoning ordinance. And so a comprehensive plan, the way to look at it is based on all these factors, all these considerations, all these inputs, all these elements, this is where we want to go as a city. And that's ultimately decided and administered by city council. But how do you get there? And that's through zoning. And so without updating zoning ordinances, many planning goals can't get you there. So after a comprehensive plan, you've gone through it. Sometimes we don't take the next step and evaluate all the zoning within the current elements and where we are. And so simply put, you can't attain the goals established in a comprehensive plan without looking at both. So zoning means different things to different people, okay? And for developers, zoning's a building tool. For residents, it's a tool used to protect different areas within the current conditions and where we are. For local government, it's a tool to promote prosperity, health, and welfare of the whole community, of the entire community. For planners, zoning is a tool to achieve the planned goals, turning a comprehensive plan into reality and can largely based on the zoning ordinance. So updating that is very important. We're very fortunate here, and if you haven't gotten to know him yet, who's come into planning and development to head that is Mr. Nathan Woods, who understands all those factors and the education and the municipal association, where we go to. So there are a lot of rules to be followed in that. So I just wanted to mention that since there's so many people here and watching online. We appreciate your input. A copy of this article, we can send you a link to it that's been done. But as we started the meeting, I wanted to say that. So with that being said, we're going to open a public session. Here's what happens in our public session. The public session, anything that's not on the agenda tonight that pertains within the purview of this committee can be spoke about. The session can be up to 15 minutes total, and each speaker can speak for up to 3 minutes. Speakers can prepare copies of what they have, and we'll make sure it gets attached to the minute meetings for the remarks. So, right now, I'd ask Commissioner Rice, Vice Chair, to conduct this portion of our meeting.
Sure. Yep. So we'll go ahead and open the public session portion of the meeting today. Is there anyone that would like to come up and speak on anything that's not on the agenda this evening? If you would, your name and
Eric Newton, 235 West Old Penland Road. This has really not a whole lot to do with the Planning Commission, but I saw the fireworks for the first time, I guess, in 3 or 4 years that the city put on last week, and I thought that was awesome. It was awesome. It's a great thing for the community, so I plan to tell the council that as well, but I was really excited that we were able to, or the city was able to bring that back, so.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric.
Lynn Richardson, 301 Edgewood Avenue. I just have a question about the comp plan, because Herb just addressed it. I signed up for one workshop that was canceled. I haven't gotten any more information about any workshops, and I don't even know that I know about the survey you're talking about. Can you tell me where the link to that is? And I'm just concerned that we haven't had as many opportunities for public input. This rests with the Planning Commission. Y'all know I was the chair up to December. This rests with the Planning Commission, and so ultimately it's your responsibility, not the company that's been hired to help you write it. They should just be your sounding board. They should be listening to what you say that goes in there. But anyhow, can you give me some updates on how citizens can actually get involved?
Yeah, Nathan,
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The link to the survey is on the banner of the city website. It's been there for, at this point, probably 4 or 5 months.
Did you send an email blast to them?
We did. It's gone out multiple times. We did hangers on trash cans about 2 weeks ago. And I'll be completely frank with you, the survey response is what a lot of this is building on, and it's been abysmal for a town our size. And there have been multiple mailers and things that went out for people to participate.
What else can we do to increase citizen input?
The next thing that I'm gonna do is a lot of the folks that are here tonight, I'm gonna be contacting you individually to, fortunately or unfortunately, Herb and I might do, what do you want to call them, neighborhood talks. So, like, we're just gonna show up if there's a community room or something like that to try and get folks to participate. So we have, we did have a strong uptick after the hangers went on the trash cans of people filling out the survey. And so the way it works is based on there's an existing conditions memo that was released. Based on that and the survey responses, they'll move into the vision statement and the things we think that the comp plan should address, in addition to the regular elements. So we're still sort of in survey mode, but yeah, I think we're
Any
doing.
of the roundtable discussions that were talked about been held?
Not much.
Okay, that's what's concerning me. You're not doing the things to go out and directly meet with the public, and that, to me, that's an important part. If they're like me and seem to be oblivious to some information.
Yeah, I think that there have been a lot of opportunity to participate in the survey. Again, the neighborhood meetings will be the next step for us to.
I haven't seen anything on Nextdoor. Has anything been placed on there?
I deleted Nextdoor months ago, so I don't go Nextdoor if I'm honest with you.
Well, it does.
Throughout the city's website, throughout
I'm not sure
Facebook,
if
throughout
it's-
social media, Alan has done a lot of that, but there are some, and hopefully that answered your question where we are. There are some plans to go out to have some neighborhood meetings. And
I know when that company came and presented their approach to it, they talked about having roundtable events all through the year, and we're in July now.
And there were roundtables, there were, and you'll see that in
There's
there. People
those
didn't
are to
show
come.
up.
There's still plenty of opportunities for public
Okay, because
participation.
that's a good way too. And that's what I thought the first one was that got canceled.
It was. That was the mapping exercise that we did. But yeah, there will be plenty of public participation opportunities in the future. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Elaine.
Yeah, and I think one other, isn't there a do-it-yourself kit that larger groups
Yeah.
or churches as well are able to get to where they can present that, basically a condensed program to their group as well? And I think, is that on the link as well? Or is
Yeah,
that something you have to
so-
contact the city?
My contact's on there and it explains that, but yeah, so if you are a member of a community group and would like for your particular community group to have input on that, there's a do-it-yourself package that we're happy to give you, and you and your group can fill that out. It'll come back to our department, and then we would make sure that that data is incorporated in the community survey results.
Thank you so much for the comments.
I believe this gentleman.
Sir,
What is your
My name is
name?
Robert Lee. Is there a sign in?
you would sign in, please.
Robert Lee, I live at 113 Presley Drive here in Clemson. Is it working?
Robert what?
Robert Lee, L-E-E.
Thank you.
Clemson. My concern has come up about actually the very composition of the board itself and recent developments with city council and a new ordinance. And in my mind, and maybe in my mind alone, but I'm going to put it to everyone else for review about it, your value as what the state qualifies a board member as, professional expertise, knowledge of the community, concern for the future welfare, and to represent a broad section of the interests and concerns of the community. And those are both specified by shall in the state code. So those two things, shall be this and shall be this. Now, city council came along a little while ago and came in and thought, and I might be wrong on this, but when you all make recommendations, so you know something about ordinances and language of ordinance. So I think in my mind, when it says shall and there are no mays, that means, shall means that's the way it is. It doesn't mean you can tack on this and tack on that and tack on that. Well, city council tacked on something. I'm sorry I don't have a bigger picture of this, but the appointment process, according to state law, goes like this. Those two shalls. Well, city council came in and said, added in additional criteria that included shall also, in addition, the wording goes, I did print it out here also, in addition, sorry, I can't find it right at the moment. In addition, will inclusiveness and representation will be factors in the selection process. So I have no idea the vagueness of representation and inclusiveness to me means wide open, wild card in the world, very subjective, dependent on and I just don't think there was a lawsuit against the city for illegal ordinance, something else about planning, but I believe the ordinance itself is illegal because it comes in behind what the state clearly says. I've printed out the sections here and says, no, we don't have to pay attention. We're going to tack on our own thing after the shall. So I don't want to take any more time, but I wish you'd review it. I wonder if I can pass this to someone. I printed these things out, and both the ordinances themselves, and this is a city council meeting. This is what, in my mind, your membership on the board, planning commission board is reduced to. Somebody come along and saying, you can look at a board and see it's not reflective. There's the, uncompleted sentence, reflective of what? I have no idea. But that's a city council quote from the meeting where they approved this ordinance. So I can look at a board and just by looking at you, see what's, I just don't buy it. I think it's wrong. I think it's against a violation of state law to have that ordinance. And I thank you for listening. I'll pass this on to you.
Thank you very much.
Right. This is the
I think y'all know why I'm here. I'm here on behalf of my parents who live at 210 Strawberry Lane. My name is Gay Marie Eidmiller, and we don't think we need, or the three of us combined, don't think we need any more student housing in the city limits of Clemson. The university should start building stuff to house the additional students that they're bringing in. And that's what I'm finishing filling this up, but that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on any items not on the agenda this evening? Did we have any comments that were emailed in or sent to staff?
The chair has all, everything.
But that's representative of the action.
Okay.
There was nothing
Okay.
in this session.
Well, we didn't. Thank you all for the ones that came up and spoke this evening, but at this time we'll close public session.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner Rice. So we're going to go ahead and follow our agenda. We'll move to the adoption minutes from our June 10th, 2024 regular meeting. Have all the commissioners had an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any edits, omissions that have been noted? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So move.
To adopt the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Adoption of minutes is approved. So tonight, the first action item on our agenda tonight is RZNE 272-2025 proposed map amendment known as the Cambridge parcel. Staff, are there any updates or reports or changes that commissioners need to be aware of?
No changes. Nick's here to present and answer questions and discuss.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Newton, the applicant, to come forward and to update. Kind of as a reminder, based on Planning Commission rules, not in writing, you have 10 minutes for a presentation to the Planning Commission. If an extension is needed, let us know and we can judge it at that time.
All right. Appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I have a tremendous amount of respect for all of you. I was once a Planning Commission member for several years, and I know that you're volunteers and you put in a lot of hours, and I respect it and appreciate what y'all do. It's a thankless job, and it's very difficult at times, so I appreciate what y'all do. Also appreciate y'all hearing me out here today with the proposed rezoning request. So just to give you a little bit of background, I developed Cambridge Creek there on the corner. It was zoned, as many of you know, it was zoned RM3. I tried to acquire these parcels when I was assembling those parcels at Cambridge Creek, and wasn't successful in doing that. But I stayed in contact with the property owners and mentioned to them that if they ever did want to sell, to please reach out to me and let me know. They finally did so, I don't know, 6 months ago, and said they were ready to sell. As everyone's aware, this is a little bit of a challenge site because of the creek going right down the middle of it, and because it's zoned R20. I think we could all agree that R20 is probably not the highest and best use for that property. It would certainly, because of where it's located and what the sellers are asking for it, there's no way that a single-family development would go here. As you know, you've got the Clemson Heritage Assisted Living Facility there across the street. You've got Cambridge Creek there on the corner, the gas station, the Exxon there, and Ingalls. And then, of course, on the lower side, you've got Monaco Estates, and then which eventually touches Westcott. Just to give you all a little bit of background about me, for those that don't know me, I am a native. I'm a rare native of Clemson. I've lived here my entire life, all but 5 months of my life, as a matter of fact, to be technical. I was the only person in my entire family that wasn't born in Anderson or Greenville. I was born in San Jose, Costa Rica. My mother is Costa Rican. My father met her down there, and I was born there and brought back here. And I don't know anything other than Clemson. The first house I remember was in East Pryor, which is in the city limits of Clemson, right on the corner, the first house on the right. And then we later moved into Monaco Estates, the neighborhood that adjoins this property. And my father still lives there. I moved in that house in third grade, and I roamed that neighborhood along with Ashley Estates. I rode my bike. I rode my bike up to Ingalls quite often on Cambridge Drive as a kid, sometimes with my skateboard. So I know the area very well. I've seen this whole town grow in my 47 years of life. I also spent a lot of time in Camelot. My grandparents lived in Camelot, another old, well-established neighborhood. My grandfather and my father developed that neighborhood, and my grandparents lived there, and my father built a lot of houses in there. My father built a lot of houses in Monaco Estates. In fact, the Newtons go back 8 generations. My kids are 8th generation, and My grandfather claimed to have had only a third grade education and he was a rock mason, later became builder, and passed that on to us and built a lot of the houses in and around Clemson. I remember my grandmother telling me a story one time. I was very close to my grandmother. I'd sit on the recliner next to her and we'd talk about things that they had done, and I always thought it was funny. And one story she told me that she built, or when my grandfather was building houses on Riggs Drive and Strode Circle, everybody was up in arms about it because it was very controversial at the time because nobody wanted to see that property developed. He built houses in there when it was a dirt road. He built Banks McFadden's home in there, the famous, Clemson football player. Every time I saw Banks McFadden, he told me how awesome my grandfather was and how important that house was to him, and he lived there till the day he died. I give you all this just to kind of give you perspective. I went to Clemson, graduated in 90. I went to Daniel High. I went to Morrison Elementary. It's now Clemson Elementary, and then went to Edwards. Then Daniel decided to go to Clemson. It was the only place I really wanted to go. I'm a diehard Clemson fan. I love this town. I love it because of the university, and I love everything about it. And I'm fortunate enough, I could have gone to a lot of places to work. I decided to raise my family here and do business here. I don't have a t-shirt shop, a restaurant, a bar. I'm a real estate guy. I'm a builder. I'm a developer. That's what I do. That's how I make my living. And that's how my father made his living. That's how my grandfather made his living. And they did that building houses and developing in the area. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that I'm able to do that in the town that I grew up in. I do projects in other towns. None are more exciting than the ones I get to do here. I like to tell people that I develop with a conscience. And some people, a lot of people that come and want to do projects here in this town, they're from out of town and they don't do things that you're proud of. The things that I have done and been a part of, I'm very proud of. One of them is Westcott. A lot of people didn't realize this, but me and two of my brothers redeveloped Westcott. It was developed by the Simons in 1992. They sold 3 lots, 2 of which weren't built on. Two of which were built on. One was bought by Colonel Whitley, who lived in Monaco Estate because he wanted a buffer. The other lots, there were 5 or 6 lots in the very back of the development that didn't have infrastructure. We were able to negotiate a deal with them. They went 10 years without building anything, and we built all the houses that you see in there today. Well, the majority of the houses that you see in there today are sold to lots. The people that eventually built houses in there today. And I'm very proud of that development. It's one of the nicest developments in Clemson. Those of y'all don't know this, I'm a vertically integrated company. We do single family residential, houses from the 550 to 950 range, and we also do student housing. A lot of people just associate me with student housing. That's not all I do, but it is a big part of what I do. But I've been involved in a lot of development all over Pickens, Anderson, Oconee County, starter homes, all the way up through, when I worked in college, helping build $1 million plus dollar houses. So I possess the skill set to do a lot of different things related to construction and development. And I'm very passionate about my town. I'm very passionate about the direction the town is heading. Contrary to what a lot of people might think, I don't want to see it be nothing but student housing. But I do think that I do have a different approach in how I think that we need to develop our town. The university's growing enrollment by 600 to 800 students a year. They've had record applications every year for the last however many years. My daughter is going to be a sophomore at Clemson this year. When she applied, there were over 60,000 applicants. Our football program is on top of the world. Our entire athletic program is on top of the world. I go to national conferences. Clemson is a market that everybody wants to be in, and primarily because of all the barriers to entry. The high barriers to entry are a part of what make this market so attractive. And that sounds crazy, but that is, they love markets, and we manage properties for people, or for a lot of these institutional groups that want to invest in Clemson. And so, we're, like I said, we're a vertically integrated company. We do construction, development, sales, and property management. We manage about 2,000 beds in the market, and contrary to what everybody thinks.
So, Mr. Lee, we're at the 10-minute time limit. I'm going to authorize an extension of 5 minutes more.
Okay, all right. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Sure.
There's a shortage of housing. There is a shortage of housing, and we've been tracking the data. I would be glad to share. I would share it with anyone that asked, and I'd ask you not to show it to anybody else. But we've been tracking the data for quite some time now, and there's a shortage of housing. Rates have increased for the last 6 years since we've been tracking it, an average of 10% per year at the purpose-built student housing properties. So there's a need. We've got to absorb this need, and I have a theory that you do it in pockets. You do it in pockets, and to me, this is a site. There are certain places where I think these kind of projects make sense. This is a site that makes sense. It's a transition parcel between what is basically high-density residential and commercial and low-density residential. And what I would like to do is, I don't want to come in and put a strip center. I don't want to do a mid-rise building. I want to do townhomes. Which the RM3 zone designation would allow me to do. And those are, to me, a perfect transition property between the high density and the lower density. Whether this project gets approved or whether this zoning request gets approved or not, somebody's going to develop this. It might be, somebody may try to rezone this a year from now. Somebody may try to rezone it 10 years from now. But this is a 6-acre parcel. There aren't very many parcels left, and townhomes are very versatile. They're very versatile because if they could rent to students, they could be workforce housing. They could be, they could rent to a lot of different folks, or they could sell individually, and they could become what we consider affordable type housing as well. So you have a chance, somebody that's willing and able to do a project, a townhome project here. I would humbly ask that you strongly consider changing the zoning to the RM3 so that I can do this project. And I know you're going to get a lot of I know you're going to get a lot of feedback from the residents and a lot of people that I know and respect and admire, and I get that in the position that you're in, but I would humbly ask that you would honor my request to change the rezoning. I had other data. I don't have enough time to talk, but property values is something that people talk about a lot. I have a lot of data that I put together. One of the big misconceptions is that property values will go down, and that's absolutely 100% wrong. I've got the data to support it. In the last 10 years, the real estate in Clemson has appreciated. The average median price in the city of Clemson has increased 144%. And that is not going to stop anytime soon. The kitty condos, the ones that sell, those have increased 176% in the last 10 years. One thing that I'll challenge everybody in the room to think about is, like, do we want, this is what I don't want, do we want parents buying single family homes and putting their kids in them That's what you're gonna have if you keep pushing these, these projects out. And, it is nothing for them to pay $500,000 for a house and put 2 people in it. It is nothing. I heard the other day one sold for $1.1 million and they're putting their kids in it. That's what's gonna happen, because they wanna be as close to campus as possible. They say, well, do the projects out, and I'm doing them. But I promise you, they're gonna buy the houses in our neighborhoods, and I've got the data right here. The median price is, right for 2024 is 500, the average median price is $521,000. If you don't think they're gonna buy the houses in our single-family neighborhoods, just test it. We'll see. It's already happening. And this comes from experience on the sales side of our business, on the real estate side. It's happening already.
So we're at that mark. I have the ability to give you 5 more minutes. Would the commission like to hear any more of this data? Were you?
Sure. I could talk forever.
If it's relevant
Yes.
to what you're saying, would the commission want to hear this info? I'll give you 5 more minutes, and
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, the average rate of inflation over the last 10 years has been 2.63%. I know we've had high inflation the last, year or so, but the average year over year has been increase in median house prices 14.42%. That's crazy for a single family home. It's 17.64 for the investment condos, and there aren't a whole lot of those left, by the way, because they're getting bought up by people that are using them as weekend condos. And so right now there are 5 kitty condos for sale. 5. And the average median price is just under $300,000. The one's up for sale right now. The other townhome type properties, like the ones you see in the Grange or Patrick Square, the average price of those right now is $540,000. The average, or the median price is $439,000. But there's only 5 kitty condos available right now for sale. Like I said earlier, we track this data, we've been tracking it for the last 6 years. Rents have gone up 10% year over year. 10%. That is insane. And I'm in the business, okay? There are properties that are gone up over 20% per year the last 2 years. Why is that? This is a function of supply and demand. And so we've got these infill areas are perfect for this type of project. And in my humble opinion, if we don't, we're going to see sprawl like you've never seen before, which I'm generally opposed to sprawl. I participated in it, so I've done projects that are outside the outskirts of municipalities, participated, but I generally don't like it. I generally think everything ought to be closer and work its way out, and I know that's not a very popular opinion, but the data is there to support these type of projects, and I think this property is ripe for it. And whether I do it or not, it doesn't really matter. But I want to do it. I would love to do it, and I think it would be good for the community. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. So at this time, we come up to the section of the meeting. I mean, we may have, the commission may have questions after a while, but this is a public input time.
Okay.
So do we have any, you're welcome to sit down. Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? If so, we'd ask you to come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. As a reminder, each member of the public has 3 minutes to comment on the proposal before us tonight. the public does have the ability to secede their time to one individual to represent them, and that would be no longer than 20 minutes. So if you would, please state your name.
Mike Nebeski, 201 Westcott Drive.
Yes, sir.
So, we've got 3 minutes, but you can't extend our 3 minutes, but you could extend his.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, here's how this works.
I just want to make sure I understand the rules.
We have, the planning commission made rules before I got here.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I got it.
This
I
is
just wanted to make sure.
what it is.
I understood. Got it. One speaker, you could offer.
Right. If you have one speaker, then we could offer extensions.
Sure.
It's going to take 3 minutes. Mike Nebeski, 201 Westcott. And I'll start by saying I've been friends with Eric for 30 years, so none of this is personal. And I appreciate what he's doing. I will agree with all the numbers he threw out, the growth that we're going through. I'm not going to disagree with any of that, but I think Eric actually made the case that I would of why this property should be rezoned and some of the things that he said. He talked about moving the buffer. That's all it's going to do is just move the buffer of residential versus, family housing down the street closer to where, it is zoned for single family homes. Then the next, person that wants to rezone will say, I'm just trying to move the buffer a little bit more. All of a sudden, Cambridge will be nothing but multifamily homes, and we don't need that. The infrastructure isn't there for that. It's a single road. The traffic is a nightmare right now. It is Aquina and Cambridge, much less going up from Cambridge to 93. We built he built the Cambridge Creek there, and we never really addressed the infrastructure that was needed road-wise, traffic-wise. So I'll just point that out. I really think, he says it's not going to decrease the value. He built Westcott. He pointed that out. It's a great neighborhood. And while the value of all the homes are going up in general, you can't make the case that having a development that's versatile where anyone can move in there, is what Eric said. That's not what we need. We do not need a development being built that close to our single-family homes where anyone can move in. The buffer is perfect. The zoning as it is now was set for a reason, and we don't need to change it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Robert Kendrick, I live at 211 Monaco. This is quite a lengthy document, and since we have limited time, I'd like to provide some of my limited copies, although it was also posted online for your consideration. This was prepared by Mr. Scott Drury, also a resident of Monaco Estates, my neighbor. At your leisure, before you make your decision, please read over the paragraphs covering Section 7A2 of the Natural Resources section, Section 7C2 of the Comprehensive Plan, Section 7C4 of the Comprehensive Plan, Section 7E2 of the Comprehensive Plan, as well as the following points at the bottom of the page. His concern primarily is the re-engineering of the creek, which I'm sure Mr. Newton and his business have looked into before considering the feasibility of this development. However, we, along with economic development, we certainly need to consider the environmental impact of this new one. I personally have some concerns regarding quality of life. It was argued that the Berkeley, the smart homes, Berkeley, what are they called? Berkeley Village, it was said, would be a buffer and no houses would directly border Cambridge Court. No. My house does. My two neighbors do. Yeah. Early in the history of that development, I had two Clemson police officers come through my backyard with flashlights one night, pursuing an alleged car robbery subject, break-in. I don't want that happening again. Privacy fence or no behind the property. I have on several occasions met some fine young folks, students here, guests in our town, who decided they didn't want to take the long way to their townhome and instead decided to walk through my property. I don't want those conversations again. My house, 211 Monaco, directly borders one of the parcels in question. Now, the argument that development of multifamily and these parcels is inevitable, convincing on the surface, but perhaps we might consider that nothing is inevitable and that development often finds very interesting ways of meeting quality of life, economic benefit, environmental considerations. So it is not a case at all that multifamily development in these three parcels in question is inevitable. The only thing that is inevitable is a decision that you all will make considering all of the input that you get tonight. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Sir,
Yes.
would you please sign?
Sure.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Jeremy Vinson, 205 Prince Rainier Drive. So I'm at the cul-de-sac at the end of Monaco there where it touches up to Cambridge Drive. There will be a parcel still buffering between my property and the proposed parcels on Cambridge. I've submitted a letter to the commission during the week and just restating the main couple of points which have been touched on here. Also speaking back to Mr. Newton with respect to developers and real estate. Definitely understand business as an inactive CPA and professor at Clemson. I get business and the need for development, but we can't talk about property values in both directions in the same speech, which is what Mr. Newton basically said, is that as housing prices and lot prices continue to increase, the only solution then is to do the multifamily, yet then he's arguing how other single-family houses will only increase because of supply and demand. Yet then rezoning these three parcels would remove single-family housing lots from the market, thereby further quenching supply and further increasing price of other single-family lots that do remain in the city. So it doesn't really address the single-family lot amount in the city, and that will also just continue to affect prices. But multifamily in this set of parcels, it's Cambridge Creek is clearly only advertised as ideal student housing. It's not advertised as the other types of housing that Mr. Newton suggested that they could be used for in these townhomes. You see the website, it is clearly only seeking to draw in students into that space. And we don't believe the commission should consider it as to advertise to any other group, besides what it clearly is advertised. And then as the last gentleman mentioned about the actual dealing with the creek and the watershed, having been on Prince Rainier, I had significant changes, alterations to the landscape of my property when the city had to redo the culvert in 2020 and decided to try to put a gravel road through my cul-de-sac out to Cambridge so that we could, of course, exit the neighborhood, which is helpful temporarily. But that culvert was updated, and the next year we had a high water flood event that greatly exceeded that culvert as Cambridge Creek was being developed. And so the question is, would more parking lots and more housing for the number of units that would go there actually help with this watershed problem in the area? I think not. It would likely just contribute more surface, more runoff problems, and water management to what is already seems to be taking its max capacity when we have high water events. And then lastly, the Cambridge traffic problem, which has only gotten more excessive as it is a pass-through when it's really not designed to be a pass-through in terms of how much it should take of traffic, particularly during the school year. So this would be the only outlet for this neighborhood, and the number of residents proposed to be there would just multiply this issue of traffic. So we please request that you would not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you for the details in your submission.
Thank you.
Colleen Richardson, 301 Edgewood Avenue again. Mr. Newton, when he first talked about this, he mentioned that we had a shortage of housing, and that's true. But what kind of housing do we have a shortage for? It's affordable housing, workforce housing, and even less than that, we have a pretty significant minority or lower income neighborhood that would be limited to purchasing a house at way under what these prices are talking about. So I say that by saying I worked on the 2014 comp plan as a citizen and was heavily involved in the 2019 update as a PC member. It was much more detailed than a typical 5-year review is. We spent over 100 hours just working on section by section. I don't know if any of you were involved with it at that time, or it was, everybody's been replaced since then. There are multiple places in our comp plan that have goals and objectives that address protecting our single-family neighborhoods. Because the proposed RZNE-000-272-2024 request rezoning for 3 large lots of R20 along Cambridge, I am expressing my objection. These R20 lots are bounded by Cambridge Drive on one side, and I had not thought about the assisted living across the street, which is more amenable for assisted living to have right across the street due to housing or some single-family housing. I question that. But anyhow, on the bottom side, where it's like little two little strips, is surrounded by Monaco Estates, which is R20, and that long side up the other side is also surrounded by homes from Monaco Estates. The only part that's adjacent to the RM3 is the shortest side up at the top end of it. We do not need, let's see, I'm respectfully requesting that you guys deny this request. We do not need to continue eroding our single-family neighborhoods. We have already compromised, in my opinion, the single-family neighborhood of Monaco Estates by putting this type of housing on the backside of it already. It's already abutting one section of R20 along there, and then we have another piece that was those, I guess they're townhouses that Nieri built that are right adjacent to it. They're beside his property. Please do not continue to surround R20 or with multiple family housing. Let's see. What it is the rezoning will increase more of Cambridge Creek, which is obviously student housing, back more toward R20 single-family neighborhoods. I would not object to changing that 6 acres to R12 so they could make a smaller neighborhood of R12 houses in there.
So we're at the 3 minutes.
Okay.
Ms. Lane,
Can I have a
thank
little
you.
bit more? I'm almost through.
I would have to give that to everybody.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
Hurry up, I don't want to spend too much time here, so
Excuse
I am
me?
Fran McGuire.
Excuse me?
I want to rush up here because I want to have my full 3 minutes.
Oh, you will.
I don't start until after you sign in and everything.
Do what?
I haven't started the clock on anybody until after you're done signing in and everything.
I'm Fran McGuire, 103 Riverview Drive. I have actually served on Planning Commission, served on City Council. Let me start by saying my comments mean no respect to Eric. He and I have disagreed many times, agreed occasionally, but never in anger and animosity. My concern is not with the proposer, it's with the proposal. So it's interesting that, Herb, you started by talking about the comp plan, because I think the comp plan gives us excellent guidance on this. First of all, these properties were not earmarked in the comp plan for further development. I believe they're still in the comp plan. They were not changed. There wasn't a proposal to change them. They're the exact same level. But more importantly, though, I think the comp plan answers how should this property be addressed. Here's what the comp plan says. This is the vision from the housing element. The vision from the housing element. It says, quote, "The city of Clemson will preserve and protect the neighborhood character and quality of life in residential neighborhoods. Encourage a balanced range of housing types and opportunities. Promote opportunities for clean, affordable housing, and maintain neighborhood character, stability, and safety." That's the key. You're being asked to submit, to approve something that I think is detrimental to the neighborhood character, the neighborhood safety, and the neighborhood integrity. That's what this is about. It's not whether Eric has a great history in Clemson, it's about that. I think the responsibility of the proposer to the council and the city, the commission of the city rather, is to make the case for why the land should be rezoned. And that case needs to be built on the comp plan. That case needs to explain to me and the citizens, why is this an improvement for the city, healthier for its residents, and a better use of that land than what's currently there. It's not the council's job or my job to explain why you shouldn't do this. It's the presenter, the developer's job to present why this should be done. I read Eric's reason. I think you read the reason. I was going to read it to you, but I don't have the time. The reason he provided has nothing whatsoever that answers the question, which is, why should this be built? It's based on old tropes, comments that are irrelevant, things that don't explain why this should be built. There is no reason in the proposal you were given to accept this. And I dare you, I challenge you, when you have your discussions, find the reasons that he provided why this should be done. There aren't any. The problem not the small specifics, it's the concept of we have a comp plan, our obligation is to follow it. This proposal does not meet the comp plan. It doesn't present, as far as I can see, anything that explains why this is a benefit to the residents. Why does this help us be a healthier community? It doesn't answer questions like this. This is what, when I was on the Planning Commission, I expected developers to tell me the answers to these kinds of questions. Why should I do this? Does it address a largely unmet need? Does it enhance the quality of life for residents? Does it benefit the community, not just Monaco Estates, but other parts of the community? Does it present something new and needed to the housing market? Does it provide something we currently lack? I find none of those answers anywhere in the proposal that you read for tonight. Nowhere. Doesn't matter if it's a great idea, doesn't matter. I think the onus is on the developer to show you and you show the community this helps build a better Clemson. That's all.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Anybody else?
All right, Keith Rocco, 213 Westcott Drive. I live kind of in the corner there that borders Cambridge and up to Monaco. I bought my property from Mr. Newton back in 2003, and I sat on it and held on to it, and when I finished my military service, I built and moved in. It was the perfect place. It is, Mr. Tyler, you mentioned that one of the reasons for zoning laws is to protect the residents. I'm here to protect the residents. I'm here to protect my residents. I'm here to protect my neighborhood. The people in my neighborhood and those by it around us have like-minded thought. We have a mutual respect for each other's privacy, for our property, and we care for each other. We have a shared sense of community. We look out for each other. When someone's in the neighborhood that looks suspicious, we call out, we ask, we find out, because we're looking out for each other. I don't question, Mr. Newton's motives. I think he's done a lot for Clemson, and that's good. But we need to keep the zoning laws the way they are. A lot of thought, a lot of energy went into that planning, and I don't think we just throw those out to help maximize someone's business or to help put roofs over students' heads. When more students move in there, they do not have the same sense of community. They do not have the same sense of well-being for each other. They're temporary. They're there for a year. They're there for maybe 3 years. They often don't know each other. They don't know their neighbors, and they certainly don't know us for the most part. And the closer we get to the students, the more I think we've already pointed out, whether it's the density or whether it's people walking through the neighborhood. I pick up a bag of trash by Cambridge probably every 4 weeks on my property. And it's beer cans and it's all the stuff that generally go with students. We can build townhouses there as opposed to student apartments. I'm not sure what the difference is, but I think we've already pointed out that it's going to be students that live there ultimately. So I'm here to protect the neighborhoods. You know, we are what Clemson is. This is why Clemson is so popular. This is why people want to move here, because it is a small, big college in a small community, and we still maintain that sense of small community.
Thank you so much. Just one question. Did you write in as well?
I
If I'm
did.
thinking right.
I did
Okay.
write in.
So we do have your comments in more detail there. I just want to thank you for taking the time to submit those as well. Anybody else?
My name is Marty Gaulis. I was just aware of this meeting just 2 days ago, being a past resident of Westcott and still living within a mile of that subdivision.
Can you state your address, please, for the record?
300 Pershing Avenue in Patrick Square. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We were residents there 3.5 years ago, 100 Westcott, which is the first house on the right-hand side coming in. And I mentioned to my wife, it's like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this noise for a little while longer. Sitting there at the stop sign, these kids with these new exhaust systems that they have on them, starting out there first gear, I'm sorry for getting into a little more detail, getting in first gear and going through 3 gears. After 2 years of losing sleep, I said, I'm out here. Love these guys. Oh, by the way, Eric, thank you for all the accomplishments your family has done here. Credit on and above all. What can I say? You know, 1, 2, 3, 4 generations, right? That's all. What? You want to say something?
I'm the seventh.
7? He's still lying to us again, Chamber. No. So, yeah, we left that subdivision more so for that reason. Loved the house. We downsized. We did get value for dollar, but it just wasn't conducive for me for sleep. The bags under my eyes are partially from that. Anyways, you know, I hear him speaking about R20 not being the most desirable place because of the creek. And him saying my best days are riding my bicycle down Cambridge Road. Can I say enough? If you had 600 more people, would you want your children or grandchildren to be riding down that road? I wouldn't. I would, you know. They've been, you know, and the next gentleman who comes into my place, he has a little clout. You know, he's into sports. Eric says they support the Clemson sports team. They're the best in the world, and on and on. This guy has his own box. He stays for 6.5 months. And we were friends. The closing was good. And I said, Robert, what was your, you know, can you tell me? He said, Marty, he said, I know you mentioned something about it, but you're 100% correct. You can't live with that noise level on that road. Can you imagine another 600 cars coming down through there, stopping at that same stop sign, gunning it to go down through the road? I wouldn't want to be there. Do I still meet up with these guys in Westcott? Yes, great community, like Rocco said. You couldn't have a better family over there. But for you guys to go ahead and accept this, it would be against my wishes.
Thank you so much for your time and your comments and your perspective.
Mr. Thomas, if you could let me know to speak up, because I'm getting a message saying it's hard to hear them through the...
Okay, with our new sound system, that's our microphone, so if you could, they've gotten a message from online viewers that they cannot hear you. So if you would speak up, it'll catch it to the microphone so the online people can hear it. I'd appreciate if everybody could do that so our viewers could hear you.
Absolutely. My name is Brad Spink. I live at 504 Southington Court in Greer, South Carolina. So I am with Keller Williams Realty. I was hired by Don Gibson, that owns the majority of this property, his cousin Rhonda, and the nephew Drew, to represent them on this property. We had a conversation about whether we wanted to go to the market with this or whether we just wanted to go directly to Eric because he'd done so much development in the area and they had, you know, a past relationship with Eric from when he did Cambridge Creek. So in this case, we decided just to go directly to Eric and have a conversation with him and see if he was interested in this project before we took it to the market. Whether this project is approved or not, the family's wishes is to not hold on to this property. This was inherited property. These homes, the 3 homes that are on these parcels need a significant amount of work, which they're just not willing to do, to put in the money for these properties. So most likely, you know, if this does not get approved from Eric, most likely our next course of action is just to put this property on the market, onto the open market. But I just wanted everybody to understand that regardless of the outcome of this, their wishes is not to hang on to this property. And they need to sell this property. Obviously for them, if I'm looking out for their best interest, you know, we talk about highest and best use in real estate. Well, the highest and best use for them is something like this project here. This land for them is worth more money selling it to develop townhomes than it is 6 or 7, 8 single-family homes. My job is to represent them to the best of my ability. So I just wanted to make that clear just as far as the intentions of the family, what they plan to do with this property. If this isn't approved, then most likely you'll be seeing this property come on the market very shortly.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate your comments.
My name is Russ Roark. I'm reading directly from Eric's thing off the website when he submitted a request for changes.
And then what's your address? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wrote it. 203 Prince Rainier Street in Monaco. And the first words are Cambridge Drive is in transition area from commercial to multifamily. That's not really true. If you blow back, there's 11 houses on the right. Cambridge deads into Issaquah. There's 11 individual houses on the right side of the street, and there's 12 individual houses on the left side of the street, running all the way up to the corner when the front's 93, which is commercial. And there had been a couple of houses on that street that were bought in the last couple of years that were run down. So if the realtor puts them on the market, the owners will get what they want quickly, and those houses will be upgraded and made whole. And I guess my last question was, and has nothing to really do with this particular issue, so can someone request zoning for change for property that they don't own? You don't have to have any ties to the...
Yes.
So I can just pick a parcel out and come to you and request a zoning change without any kind of...
Not without the consent of the owner, but they have...
That's what you need, just consent? Okay, I was just curious. It doesn't have to be a contract in place or a pending offer or anything like that?
No, but if you think about development through here or really anywhere, you are oftentimes structuring deals in
Okay.
advance.
Well, that answers your question. And that's basically it. I mean, and during Eric's presentation for 15 or 20 minutes, I really didn't hear one good reason why it should be changed. I heard about the good things he's done in his community relationships and everything else, but I didn't hear one thing that would benefit the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. It's very much appreciated. Anybody else?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Frank Beecham. I live at 302 Westcott Drive. I submitted a letter and just wanted to put a face with the letter there.
Yeah, I was getting ready to ask.
Myself and my wife signed that letter. And I appreciate, one, your service to our town, so I don't want that to go unnoticed. I would also request that you deny this motion or this proposal. I think that in looking at the housing around that property, I would value a community planner's perspective on what the plan looks like. And I think that you ask yourself, do we want to sacrifice single-family homes for multifamily homes? And I know my answer is no, that at the end of the day, I'm saying I don't want more single-family homes, I want more multifamily homes. And I don't think that sits well on that piece of property there. I think that growth is inevitable, and I think that student housing has a proper place, and I think that it is your job to represent our community as you do, and let's tell the developers where to add these homes and where to add student housing. Understanding that people want to be close to the university, and that I can see that, but I also would ask if we develop the 6 single-family properties of single-family homes on this property, they're not going to be as profitable, and I think that part of that is because it backs up to additional student housing. I think that because of the student housing in Cambridge Creek, will devalue even additional single-family homes built on the property. So I think that we're just pushing that buffer closer and closer. And I feel for the 10 or so homes in the Monaco area that back up to this area, that back up to the proposal, because that does dramatically affect their ability to resell their home. And that's all I have. So I would ask that you deny this.
And we would thank you, and I believe your wife's name was Stephanie?
Stephanie, that's right.
I do remember reading that. Thank you all so much for sending that in. It's very informative. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
I'm Mary Morrison. I live at 200 Westcott Drive in Clemson. I've been there 10 years and love the community. It's a great neighborhood. I appreciate the vision that was cast for that neighborhood and would like to see it remain that way. I know things change and need to change from time to time, but I'd rather see just residents change from time to time instead of seeing more student housing, more multifamily housing in our backyards. There's an increase of traffic already on Cambridge with the Cambridge Creek addition. And when you get to the intersection of Cambridge and Issaquena, which is right outside our neighborhood, it's more difficult now to even make a left out of Westcott to get to that intersection, because of the massive amount of traffic that's coming around that corner from Cambridge, turning right on Issaquena. So it's just going to back up traffic more. I also work in a retirement community, so I'm familiar with assisted living communities, and I'm concerned for the residents that live across the street, and not only for those who can still drive, but also for those families to go visit them and other transports that they often need to go to doctors and things like that with the additional traffic that would be on that road. So I'm just concerned about those changes with the amount of traffic there and the road not changing, but also just the community itself that would be disrupted, I think, with more housing there beyond single-family housing. And I do think that because of the way real estate is in Clemson, I mean, it's hard to find a home if you're trying to buy outside of the academic year changeover. We tried to do that, and it's difficult. So single-family housing is in demand, and I think that those lots would sell in that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Is there anybody else?
Hi, I'm David Hale. I live at 202 Prince Rainier Drive or Street, which is one of the other problems is mailbox has it as street and the city has it as drive. So I'm going to try to, and I do apologize if it sounded like I was out of line. I was just trying to get the rules straight, and I've also just had a death in the family, so I wasn't able to put this down in writing and get it to you earlier, so I apologize for that. So let me kind of stick with more, I'm an engineer, and so I'm going to go kind of with the facts. Okay, it was already mentioned about the runoff, and I can guarantee, and I'll put something in writing to try to explain my basis for this, but the covering of that whole area in asphalt and housing will overwhelm the creek, and the creek is the sole source of drainage, and it goes through Monaco, Ashley, Sedgewood, or whatever the one is in between. And I think it goes down to Davo's neighborhood, almost right at the bottom of that. And we've had flooding in the past. They did put increased drainage in the culverts, but we've still had flooding since they've done that. So putting that additional drainage will not be a good engineering proposal. I also agree with the statements about the traffic. Basically 50 units equals 200 people, which is 200 cars. That's a lot of traffic. The four-way stop is sometimes backs up to Lowe's. That is a Queen of four-way stop right there. More on the subjective thing. You need to drive through Monaco Circle in the winter and see just how close those houses are to the back of the properties there. I know that it probably, you say 15-foot setback, that's not that bad. There people have side-by-side setbacks 15 feet, but that's 15 feet and 15 feet, which is 30 feet. This is like right on, it towers into the house, and when you make that curve, you don't see the house, you see that monstrosity behind it. So I apologize to Eric for him saying he loves the community and wants to take care of them, but to put that many houses that close to those properties is not loving your neighbor. It is saying, I want to make as much money as I possibly can, and I'm going to do it at the cost of anybody else. The other thing is that development, this is my opinion, looks like a student apartment trailer park. It's how many apartments can I cram on here? I don't have hardly any landscaping. Had a beautiful creek running through the middle of it, and it is totally overgrown, not kept, doesn't seem to have any kind of landscaping standards around that. And so the old saying of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. If he's going to do the same thing in here, it's kind of ridiculous for us to say, oh yes, this is going to benefit the community. And that's the other thing is several times the statement has been that your purpose or goal is to enhance the welfare of the community. Well, is it the welfare that lives here now? Or are we trying to evangelize and bring new welfare people in and say, hey, we're going to give y'all new places to live. Don't worry about the people that live here. We got their stuff. We're just going to walk all over them. But you guys are going to have a nice new place to live. So that's kind of the summary of most of the things. Oh, there's one thing. Clemson just eat up with student apartments. I don't know the last single-family development that's come, but it would be, I'm going to speak to you, Herb, if somebody come and tried to put 20 Chick-fil-A's, it's like, yeah, Chick-fil-A's are good, but 20 in one area is too much. Sooner or later, we got to say, we got to have some balance here. We're bringing everything in on one priority for one subject. So I think that's all I got to say.
Yeah, and so sorry for your loss. Those
It's
are
actually
always...
Kathy's dad. You know Kathy.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you.
Sorry. Yes, sir. Anybody else? We'll make sure everybody has opportunity. Well, what is our...
That was a public session.
Oh, that was a public session. Yes, come on. Come on.
Yep.
Yeah. It gets confusing after a while because we're intently trying to hear what everybody has to say, very intently.
This is just off the top of my head looking at this, and I'm going to speak.
Just for the record, can you state your name and address again?
Robert Lee, 113 Presley Drive, Clemson. Thank you. I'm going to speak to the issue of this. I'm not for or against this development, but speaking to the issue of this and in general, that it seems that we're in kind of, as I kind of pondered all this development, we're in kind of a gold rush here. So I think what happens when we really look far out in the distance, and if there's an after the gold rush, maybe it won't be, but this student housing gold rush, what happens after that? I just encourage some longer range thinking about the quality of everything. If there's an after the gold rush, if the education bubble, if there is such a thing, if that ever pops or decreases. So I just encourage some longer range thinking and the quality of things here. I haven't lived here all my life. I've lived here about 23 years now. And in the first 45 years of my life, I lived other places, but I've been a lot of other places, lived there, but this has the best combination of trade-offs of any place I've lived, so I stay here. So I just encourage some real long-range thinking about if it's an after the gold rush kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody else? So at this time in the public session, if there's nobody else, I want to give everybody else one more chance because I like seeing this many people here to be able to comment. The other part of it is we have received some comments. They reflect almost everything that everybody has said. We saw Mr. Benson here who wrote in. I think it's important to mention the people that did write in and opposed to the development. And then Ms. Stevenson, who is on Westcott Drive, wrote in as well. And she mentioned the same thing that everybody has said about comprehensive plan in the neighborhood is what she did. We also had Mr. Kendrick wrote in, and he had, we're talking about the natural resources, the paper that was given to us, that was thoroughly explained there and something needed to be looked at. I would also tell you that Miss Ann Rash had wrote in from 320 Princess Grace Avenue. We did get her comment opposed to this. I would tell you Miss S. Schumann wrote in, says she's 19 years in Westcott and is opposed to this. Also tell you Mike Nebeski, who's in Westcott, wrote in and is opposed to this development. And then, of course, we saw Mr. Beecham here, and he and Stephanie wrote in with some clarity points to do that. And Brent Rocco, I think, is that you?
No, sir, that's my brother.
Okay. So I was sitting here when you said the name, I had read through all these and I was going, wait a minute. So anyway, his brother wrote in, very kind, and our department here, Nathan and those corresponded with him and gave him the answers. He had questions on, since he's out-of-town residents and owns the land there, his questions were about notification and how things were going on. So he has intentions of building in Westcott when he's done with his service as well.
His is in Monaco.
I'm sorry?
His property is in Monaco.
It backs up to it.
Let's see. Okay, I got it. I'm sorry. Monaco, and it backs up. Got it. Also, Bob and Lisa Baresh, and I hope I didn't mispronounce that name. If I did, forgive me. They wrote in, and they're concerned since they've been in 15 years, and they have said what y'all have said here about comprehensive plan, said what you've said here about sidewalks and those types of things. Tom McInnes, 206 Westcott Drive, wrote in as well, and he's opposed. And you're Keith, right?
Yes, sir.
We have his letter here as well. So I think that, just in all transparency, we need to mention all those things. So y'all, thank you for allowing me to mention what is here, because that's how public information works. So at this time, what I'd like to do, if there are no more comments, is close the public session.
Can there be a question? Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, you know, we kind of hit the thing on where we're talking about rezoning.
So they can hear
people online can't hear you if you're by there.
I'm sorry. So the question came up about rezoning without being actually the owner of the property. That was one question. I guess the next question is, if that zoning were to be approved, kind of going to one of my comments, is are all R20s, do they have the same setbacks? Do they have the same things, or are there individual limitations to say, yes, we'll rezone it, but it's going to have this much setback to give you that buffer from the property, or that kind of thing? I just don't know if that's...
Let me defer to our expert here.
What you're referring to is a planned development, so yes, if it's R20, they all have the same setbacks and things like that. So whatever this was rezoned to would have the same setbacks as everything else that's R3, whatever, or RM3 that it's being asked.
Okay.
There are instances where you can come for your, like a individual piece of property to be rezoned with different setbacks like you're talking about, but that's not what he's asking for.
All right. So to be clear, then, if this got approved, he could build as close to these properties as he did to the ones that are already there?
Whatever RM3 allows, I'm not sure what, so.
Okay, all right.
And to speak to that, part of the confusion that I'm learning from many people is, and you may know this and may not, is there are 22 planned developments in the city of Clemson. And with 22 planned developments, every development is considered its own zoning. So it doesn't have anything to do with R3 or things like that. So whatever was approved in those words is what happened. So a lot of times where people think that gives more control and things like that, there's certain things it gives, certain things it trade off. To me, personally, I don't know how our great staff keeps up with 22 zoning amendments and then the standard zoning for everybody else is hard. And what's important is the language that is written in there. I don't think there's ever been any bad intention, But if the language is not specific, then that's hard. So now that we close the public session, we're going to,
Does it make sense for me to address maybe a couple of those questions?
sure.
Not trying to prolong the meeting here.
No, that's okay. I mean, that's why we're here. And I think if they have questions, we need to address them.
So a couple of those engineering questions are, obviously, we have to hire an engineer to do all the site work design, and they would do, wetlands delineation, or, floodplain delineation, wetlands delineation, and then they would determine, because that is a waters of the state there, and they would design the stormwater system to, based on the water flow and everything, to accommodate all the runoff. So that would all be done in the design, and the preliminary designs that we have a lot of space between Monaco and this property, where the detention pond would actually go. And as far as like the buffer, there are buffering requirements in the RM3, and there are screening requirements. So I'm pretty sure we'd have to put a fence along and then landscaping, and that's all stuff that we can certainly discuss. But the layout that I have shows 30 feet off the Monaco Estate side on those 4 lots that back up to the property, and then a pretty significant buffer on the far left side. And then as far as well, I can get into some of the other things another time, but I mean, I understand, a lot of the comments that are made are pretty common comments, but one thing that I failed to mention earlier is that, being a member of the Friends of the Green Crescent, being a board member since its inception, we work real hard to get trails throughout the community. I was on the planning commission when we introduced the changes to the ordinance to require new developments to put in, sidewalks. And so obviously that Cambridge corridor gets a lot of foot traffic and is very dangerous. One thing that I have proposed verbally was to connect the sidewalks to Cambridge. Obviously, we'd have to run them the full length of this property, but maybe try to work with the property owners along Cambridge to it sets up nicely for sidewalks under that power line, and to get a sidewalk all the way down, all the way to Issaquena Trail. That's something that, I know there are negatives to development. We all know the negatives to development, but there are positives. Positives are enhanced infrastructure. I've done deals in smaller in other parts of the community where we've gone in and upgraded water lines. And
so those, I do appreciate the information. Let's move from the comment section that we were addressing what they said, and then move into commissioners and see what questions they.
All right. But because Eric brought up some good points, I do think the public should have the opportunity to respond to those points. For instance, it's great that Eric's proposing sidewalks. It really is. But if this goes through, if he chooses not to do that or someone else buys the property, they are not obliged to do that. So I think
we're required. We have to.
But you have to do that. What I'm saying, once that property is rezoned, Eric may do great things, but no one's obliged to do anything beyond what the zoning requires. I just think if you allow someone to get up in a meeting and make more comments, that's wonderful. But I think the public then has a similar right to respond to those comments if they're all possible.
Yes, ma'am.
Everything that I wanted to talk about has been covered. Everybody's been really cool. But I do have a question. Can I just ask a question? My name is Nanda Edgerton. I'm at 213 Charleston. The gentleman from Keller Williams, he mentioned that if this rezoning request doesn't go through, then the owners of the property that live in the houses now are going to be selling it because they're not interested in keeping the property. Is that right? Correct. So what was the point of bringing that up? I mean, I don't understand. So first you reach out to Eric or Mr. Newton because they've had a relationship with him, so that you felt comfortable reaching out to him first, as opposed to putting it on the market. But I mean, what's the point? What was the real point you're trying to make? You brought that up.
You're addressing
It
the
seemed
commission.
irrelevant.
Let me tell you what I think the point is and see if I can summarize. I think the point was to inform everybody that the property is going to be sold one way or another. Am I correct in that? Yes. And so I think that's what his point was.
I mean, I understand that, but what does that have to do with the zoning or not? Or
correct.
You know, what does that have to do with how it's zoned? Right. It's going to be sold, okay? I mean, the property owners can sell it if they want to sell it, but what does that have to do with whether or not it gets rezoned? It's going to be sold anyway. I mean, I just didn't understand that.
Right. And I think he wanted to make us aware of that, which has no bearing on the zoning of this. So you are correct. It has.
Yeah, and I do have another question, but I think I might keep it not recorded and just maybe ask the gentleman after.
Okay.
I think I'll do that, but I appreciate the time. I just was confused by that.
And I think you should bring that up. I mean, we want to clear up confusion.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
So I'm going to close public comments now. If there's anything else, and I would like to go to the commissioners. So do any of the commissioners have comments?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I toured the area. Yes. I toured the area and looked at the maps. There are 10 in the immediate vicinity, general vicinity, there's 10 apartment communities. There's one senior living multi-unit facility. There's 4 dense single-family neighborhoods like you have on Berkeley. And there's 4 traditional ones. So from what I'm seeing here is there's already an imbalance in favor of apartment communities in the area already. Traffic concerns. The intersection of Cambridge and Issaquena it works now because with moderate flows of traffic, but it's at an acute angle with 4 stop sign controls. There's already on Old Shirley another apartment, there's another community being built which will increase it. Seeing as how Cambridge Creek's only access is through Cambridge, this can only compound the situation. And thus, fire station number 2 will see their response times for emergency and fire services increased, unfortunately. My big concern was drainage. I looked at the Cambridge Creek project, and there's some very steep grades there. There's a lot of impervious material that's preventing, which is causing runoff. The grading is such that sometimes adjacent buildings are 1 full story difference in elevation. It's graded so steeply, what would normally be runoff would tend to be a torrent in a severe situation. The places I found would be impacted by this would be the entire section of Shaftesbury Drive, which is off Ashley, where the road runs at a low elevation parallel to the creek. There's a culvert at the midpoint of Ashley. Prince Rainier Drive crosses it. Down further south at Earl Alexander Park, I don't see too much of a problem because there's a fairly good good high ground there. One that hasn't been looked at is properties on southern Issaquena between Downs Loop and Berkeley. They have already had rainfall to this point where the people's culverts, driveway culverts, and bridges were washed out and they were stranded for several days on end. And that's under the current conditions. One other thing, this has been described as a transition property or development. And if you look at most apartments, they face away from the street with a privacy fence in the back. And I really don't see how that would promote a transition, but rather it'd be the antithesis of it. And I've had my comments if you want to make them with the record.
Okay.
That's what's wrong. That's wrong.
Yes. I've got some other stuff to do, so Greg will hold it and we'll give it to you at the end. Any other comments? Any other commissioner comments? Questions for the developer?
Other than, the only question I would have would be, other than the research you have on supply and demand, is there anything that you found in the comp plan or other reason that you would believe that this rezoning would be necessary or pertinent?
Yes, me?
No. Eric. Sorry.
You can come up, please.
Sorry, Lee.
Those are questions for the applicant.
So I take a little bit different approach to how I view things. My political views, everything. I try to take a practical approach. I personally think that the way to combat a lot of this student housing growth is to you fight fire with fire. You want to infuse as much supply into the market as quickly as possible and to make it less attractive for the big national guys to come here. And so, I go to this national conference every year. I've been going since 2012. It's the who's who of student housing, and everybody knows me there because I've been going so long, and they know that, they want me to help them put deals together in Clemson, and because Clemson's such an attractive place to do deals. And the higher the barriers to entry, the more attractive the market is for them. And they have deep pockets. This is institutional money. There's sovereign money pouring into this in this space. Student housing has become its own asset class within multifamily. And so my approach is like, if I don't develop this, the local guy doesn't develop it, who is? Who's gonna do it? And like Brad said, they're gonna try to sell the property. They're gonna have a hard time selling it for what I'm gonna pay for it because the only way I can justify paying what they're asking for it is to do something higher density. I can't see doing an apartment or a garden style community there, 3-story, 4-story deal. That might get proposed later on down the road. I can't see doing a mid-rise building there. I wouldn't want to do that. Everybody would shoot me. And so I love doing single family. I've done lots of single family deals over the years, but I also lost my shirt during the recession because everything hinges on sales. These are income producing assets and they rent relatively. That's the biggest risk you have is that they don't rent. I would love to do a single family deal there, but it won't work. You can't make the numbers work. And so what the most attractive thing to do in Clemson right now is student housing. And that's not Eric Newton. I wish I had that much control. That's market. Those are market forces. And I would love to infuse, this makes sense to me to do it here. I would love to infuse 156 beds right here and make it less attractive for these national guys to want to come here and do more deals. Because I promise you, they have very deep pockets. They are throwing, the metaphorical crap on the wall and all over the entire country in towns just like Clemson. And they have the ability, they'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to tee up deals. in the markets that they're looking in, and they don't think twice about it. And so I would like to see, if I'm driving through there, I drive through there almost every single day. What would I want to see? I would rather see this than what I see now, or I'd rather see this over, you know, a strip mall or a mid-rise or a garden-style project. And if they sell it for what I'm paying them for it, and somebody can make a single-family deal work there, you know, that's great. But there's no way. I do single-family development too. You'd have to sell the lots for $300,000 or $400,000 a lot, or at least. So, and that's not likely that that's going to happen. And so, what would I want to see there? Driving through there literally every day, I would be proud to drive by that. And, you know, to the comments on the landscaping, like, we had all that landscaping, that was all approved by the city. That was a BAR approved project, and we spent a ton of money on the landscaping. And now the current, you know, we sold it, but the current owner, like what they do as far as like maintaining, I can't help with that. But.
Did you say 156 units or 156 beds?
What I'm thinking is 156 beds. It's 52 units, so it'd be 3-bedroom units.
Hold on a second, Eric. So what you're saying is the reason, at this convention, the reason that Clemson is so attractive is because there's more students and not enough housing, so the rents are higher, right? And
yeah, the rents are going, yeah.
So the answer your question about the supply and demand is these people have nothing to do with Clemson. They're not attracted to it because of, like, we love Clemson. They're attracted to it because there needs to be more student housing here and the rents are higher.
Right.
So what you're saying is to get the rents lower is you
fuse more supply. I mean, that in some ways hurts me, but you know, like at some point you would think that the rents are going to cap out, but they haven't. They've been going up, and that was what the purpose of me telling you those stats earlier is like me going up 10%.
And so that's why I was asking if anything other than the supply and demand, because we have no control over university enrollment. We can't tell them to stop expanding or anything like that. So if they continue to add their 600 or 800 people every year, do you propose that we just rezone the entire town RM3 or RM4?
No, I wouldn't be in favor of that at all.
But that would get the rent down, right? Because you would have to keep supply ahead of demand.
Well,
that's why I see what you're saying about heading it off and getting it down, but that's only if you can get ahead of it.
I think that's what Eric was saying, was getting ahead of it by finding those little pockets that make sense in his presentation.
Yeah.
Was like, obviously not everything can be, but if you have this one little pocket of 6 acres, you know, that's a good spot to try to head it off. Like, you obviously can't completely outrun it all the time, but you try to meet it somewhere in the middle.
I mean, there are places where I would hate to see it. Clarendon Drive, for example. Like, I don't ever want to see that property developed any kind of way, right? But if it does, I would hope it would be R20, right?
You're talking about the horses?
Yeah, where the horses are. I mean, that's a big parcel. You would hope it would, if it did ever get developed, it would be something like Clarendon Hall, a very low density type of deal. But I would challenge anybody. Would anybody want to build their single-family residence right there? I don't think anybody would. I don't think anybody would honestly say that they would build their dream home on that property. It's just not. It's just there's just not enough that would attract people to want to do that. Now, Westcott and Monaco, all those roads are internal. All those houses face out towards those internal streets. This is a thoroughfare. Cambridge has been a thoroughfare since I was a kid, and I wouldn't let my kids ride up and down that road now because it's too dangerous. But that's, you know, I think the unpopular opinion is that you infuse as much supply as quickly as possible to make it less attractive because it's a function of supply and demand. It's not me. It's not me. If I wish I had that much control, I probably wouldn't be standing here right now. I'd be on the beach somewhere.
But the pricing being besides as far as what the rent is, the use of that land. That's the point I was getting at. In the comp plan, it's delineated as, you know, low density single family housing currently. Now that may change when the comp plan gets updated, you know, but in order to go against that. I'm looking for something other than that might lower student rents for a couple of years.
Well, so, okay, if we operate under the assumption that we're not going to control market forces, we can't control the market forces. They're there. The university has made it pretty clear that they're focused on academic buildings and athletic facilities, okay? And so they're leaving it up to the private sector to handle the housing needs. It's like where do you suggest that those projects be built? Where do they need to be built? Like, where does it make sense? Like, if I'm looking at these different pockets of land throughout the city, and there aren't very many left, like this makes perfect sense to do a lower density multifamily deal, which a townhome deal is lower density. It's single family attached. So you're only getting what, 18 units per acre, whereas like an RM4 you're like 60 or 56 per acre. So if you do a PD, you could do a PD here and try to do, but like to do a PD here, you're writing the ordinance and you're probably going to have some mixed use component, and you're going to create something that's going to be way denser than what I'm proposing here. I'm proposing something it's on the lower end of density as far as the multifamily is concerned.
Any other questions from?
Did I answer your question? Sorry.
I mean, I appreciate the explanation you gave, but it seems to all still tie back into the same thing. That's fine. It's one approach to take to it. I was looking to see if there was anything else to possibly.
Well, as far as like the comprehensive plan is developed based on input, from residents and what the community wants or needs. Housing, there are housing needs, and we are tasked with, whether we like it or not, we are tasked with providing housing for all of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of additional students that are being infused over there into the university every year. And if we don't, then what's going to happen is they're going to end up buying our houses in our single-family neighborhoods, and then that's going to devalue the houses in the neighborhood. I don't think this project, we can make this project look nice and make it isolated to that site, and it makes perfect sense. That is filling a need that is outlined in the comprehensive plan. Housing is a need that's right. I mean, and just like sidewalks and athletic facilities and things like that, recreational facilities.
Any other comments from commissioners?
How many beds are currently at Cambridge?
380.
380.
Yeah.
You said the university is increasing enrollments.
It's been between 600 and 800 students
every year on average.
Every year, yeah. So you think if they continue that trend, that if it's, let's say it's on the low end of that, the next 10 years, that's 6,000 more students.
Right.
Where are they going to go?
At some point, though, if they continue for the next 15 or 20 years, they'll have to go out of town anyway, right? Clemson only has, 7 square miles?
7.6.
7.6.
Start buying houses.
Yeah.
Right, they'll start buying the houses in the single-family neighborhoods.
If they bought every house for sale in the last 5 years at a 2 occupancy, how many, as a realtor, if you can ballpark that, how many houses, single family, have sold in the last 2 years?
Well, there aren't many that have. I mean, relative to other places that.
And that's my point, is that you're talking about maybe a year's worth of the increased enrollment if they bought every house that went for sale. Right. And that's where I'm saying is that eventually, at some point, either the university or us working with the county or Oconee County or somewhere else around here, because the city of Clemson will physically run out of land. We cannot house 100,000 students in town. They won't fit.
Well, this is just my opinion. I would rather keep them all closer to campus, not have them driving on the roads like 2 or 3, or 10 miles outside of town. That would be my personal preference. I lived in Village Walk for many years, and we had several students that lived there, and They were shooting fireworks at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you know, they were living in our neighborhood, and you'll see more of that. You'll see more of that because they want to be closer. They want to be closer to town. I mean, they're paying $2,000 a bed, close to $2,000 a bedroom downtown Clemson, a bedroom. So what's to say they're not gonna, they're not gonna, you know, buy our, you know, what are now $700,000-800,000 houses and put 2 people in them.
Yeah, Eric, I know you had mentioned that you had sold Cambridge Creek, so you no longer manage that property. I guess, did you ever do any demographics to find out if there were actually young professionals renting those, as opposed to it being 100% students?
We did. We had some grad students. We had some working professionals. We had a couple of football coaches that lived in there that were new, that were our analysts. So it was very appealing. I mean, I mean, as you know, we don't have any true like workforce type housing. I did do a project in Central over off of Wesleyan Drive, a little smaller one. We'll see how that goes. Everybody's been, you know, asking for the workforce housing, and we did little single garages. They're duplexes, and they're very nice. And we're having a business after hours there on Thursday, by the way. If you want to come by and see at the model, but you know, yeah, I can totally see. It may not be now, but I could totally see a time where this could convert. It could convert into a workforce housing type deal, or you know, if they get condoed, you could sell them up individually, and you know, I have struggled with that whole, you know, affordable housing. I don't really truly know what that means, because I think it's market specific, but you know, they could end up being an affordable housing type, you know, project, because they're individual units. They're single family attached.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the questions I had that came up, one is that, of course, the comp plan reads right now that it's R20. That's what the proposal was. The Clemson Next white paper didn't go out that far, so that was an additional document for us to be able to look at. But kind of looking at that and going kind of by the precedent that the Planning Commission has, that we try to follow that, protecting the neighborhoods. There's still a lot of information that I don't know that I can obtain in this one meeting tonight. So I don't know about everyone else. I don't feel real comfortable voting on this tonight with it being basically an action item on our first time hearing and getting public feedback and that sort of thing. Because there's other things regarding fire, the natural resources involved with that. There are just some other questions that I think that probably need to be dug into a little bit deeper. I agree with you, this property eventually, whether it's homes, you know, the people may not get what they're wanting for it. That may end up being the bottom line, is that they put it on the market and nobody's willing to pay for an R20 lot to build a house. But from what the pricing is for any new home being built in the area, everything that I see that comes up is between $600,000 to $800,000. I had someone tell me last week that they thought affordable was $400,000. But that's the world we live in the city of Clemson right now. Right. So I understand your point of what you're talking about, is that if you're going to build an R20 home, it's going to be close to pushing $1 million on that lot. And again, I don't see the feasibility of $1 million home being on that lot right there. Right. But I guess, Commissioner, that's just Chairman, that's my thought on this, is that I still think there's some more information that I need. I've done a lot of research on this preparing for tonight, but there's some other things that have come up tonight as well that I'd like to look into a little bit further before we make a vote.
If the other commissioners feel that way, one thing that we can do to gather that information, I don't think we can gather that here, is to call for a work session on that. I mean, how do y'all feel about that?
I think that would be the best.
So I'd like to call for a work session to be scheduled. We need to get that out on this property. And to get all these questions, I think there's so much information that was given to us, like floods, environmental things, taking a look at the regulations of storm management, and all of these different things to flesh that out. I think that's what Commissioner Rice is asking for. Do y'all agree?
Yes.
So I think at this time we'd like to not take action. Do you want to make a motion not to take action?
Yeah, I guess I'll make a motion that we table our vote this evening and look at staff and also Mr. Newton's calendar to try to schedule a workshop in the future.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Burton, second. So with that on the table, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Nobody opposed. So the action now, we'll get staff, if you would. We're in the middle of a vote. We would ask staff to look at that and coordinate with everybody's schedule to look at the work session and to get the information in. So that part passed. You had a
process question about what the workshop is and the public's role or ability or input on said workshop, or if the workshop only considers everything the public brought up today, and does this get retabled as an action item at a later date? What happens from here on due to this process?
So what happens here is there will be a public work session. You can sit into the public work session. You can hear that and all the concerns and communication, and it'll be in this room. That has to be available, or somewhere, in a public place, and probably for this one in this room. And then all the information and dialogue would go through to be able to do that, and then it would be scheduled for a vote at a later date. Because the process from here for votes taken tonight, one way or another, it would go city council. If it was no, it wouldn't go forward. If it was yes, it would go to city council, and they would have to vote. They have the ultimate on that. But with the commissioners not feeling comfortable without all the information and a lot of the points that were brought up, I mean, there was a ton of information that was brought up, want to make sure that due diligence is done, and that's how that works. And so staff is involved in that work session because, you know, I think from hearing Commissioner Burton, and also what you were talking about, engineering and water runoff and all of those things, those are huge issues. So that's how the process works. Is there anything that I missed, Nate?
No, I think he has a question.
Yes.
How do we find out when the work session takes place?
You'll publish it?
Yeah, are you signed up with the city web blast? You can go to the website, the city's web page, and sign up to get notices. You can be selective or you just get everything.
Will this be a week or two out or further?
Well, it's going to depend on the coordination of everybody's schedule. And it's harder right now whether, I can't tell you right now.
But I think the best way to stay informed is to sign up for that email blast, and you'll be, but additionally, when the work session is scheduled, it'll be posted on the website as well as in the paper, if you still subscribe to that.
Will there be a way to submit stuff like we did for this meeting?
Sure. Yeah, and you're also welcome to attend the work session as well.
Yes, and please go ahead and submit what you had mentioned in your comments. I was going to ask you after, but you said you would be glad to put that up, and I think that's very important information. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So, but the public can't speak at the workshop, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's why we want the information. Is there any other questions? Okay, with there no questions, we'll go to the next area. Are there any advisory items?
No advisory.
Okay. The next is discussion items. Jacob?
Okay, so we have a couple different discussion items. The first one is the idea of bonding the commercial space for mixed-use buildings. And we've been working on this language for a little bit.
One second. For them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Want to make sure everybody hears. Jacob, let me clarify one thing. If we recommended against rezone, do they still have the opportunity to go to council? Yes. I may have misspoke. So let me clarify that in the process, is that if we recommended against it, which I misspoke, it still has to go to council. Everything has to go to council. They're the decision makers. We're the volunteers. And we're here to gather all the information. And so that's where we are.
Another point of clarification is depending on council's decision, if council were to turn it down, it would be a full calendar year before the applicant could come back to ask for the property to be rezoned, anything else than its current zoning.
So apologize for misspeaking. Thank you, John.
Okay, so this is about commercial space for mixed-use buildings. So there's been some concerns about how do we try to promote the commercial spaces and some of these mixed-use developments to get filled up. And I'll just read out the language as these are part of the conditional use standards. So anything that's conditional use is allowed but has certain standards they must meet. This would be added to those conditional use standards. Bond for build-out of the commercial portion of the project must be posted at the time of CO for the residential portion. This bond will be equal to 150% of the build-out of the unfinished commercial space. This will be calculated by average commercial build-out cost in the area at the time as determined by the city. The bond will be returned as sections of the commercial received business license for a commercially viable business. The amount of the bond returned will be proportionate to the square footage of the commercial being occupied at that time. The bond can be cash bond or surety bond with a 2-year expiration. After 2 years, the city can call the bond and the money or portion thereof will be surrendered to the city.
So that was here on this one. So if everybody wants to look at discussion only, it has July 8th, 2024 on it. The wording is on back E. I believe when it was discussed last time, that was one of the things of how to get the bond, whether it was surety bond, what type of bond it was.
Oh, I'm sorry. You ready for some questions?
Go ahead.
Okay. I guess just for clarification, make sure everybody knows CO is certificate of occupancy.
Yes.
All right. Okay. And what's the legalities behind doing something like this?
We have ran it by our legal staff, and they said that this is within our jurisdiction under zoning to require it. We do bond out, we have the authority to bond, and this is something that is bondable. Okay. So we'll have them do a full, review of all the language before we vote on by council, but the concepts and everything have been vetted by our legal staff, and they said, yeah, this is within our jurisdiction.
What would you, so basically in this, what it says is that if they don't do anything with they don't fill their commercial space within 2 years of their CO or certificate of occupancy, then that money is turned over to the city.
If we so choose, yeah. And we would, the idea would be then we'd set up a account that would again be funding businesses too.
Yeah.
Providing, the idea would be to provide some sort of grants or something.
Sure.
But they would lose it.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
This is probably outside of my pay grade and maybe into the legalese, and I'm sure you guys are read about, but I'm just curious where it says the bond can be cash bond or surety bond with a 2-year expiration. And then the next sentence says, after 2 years, the city can call the bond and the money. So if the surety bond expires at 2 years, but the city has to wait until after 2 years, which I'm assuming is 2 years and 1 day, then the bond will have expired, correct?
Correct, that's what we can call it in.
So, but a surety bond is still valid after the expiration date?
That is when it would expire. I guess we can.
That was my only clarity. I just want to make sure, like, I don't have a problem. I just want to make sure that's where, like, I'm not.
I understand.
Yeah, just want to make sure it's not like, oh, yes, the bond that we had to get is now
the
invalid.
expiration of the bond is when it gets called in.
And that needs to be clearly spelled out in here. And I think the other thing they're asking for clarity on is what is a CO? You know what it is, you do. We need anybody else. John, that's a big catch. You had a question last time, and I need to ask you again. As you said, somebody could come in a commercial space. So did we determine how we're calculating what that really is for the commercial space? Because you gave the example of somebody setting up a false insurance company and.
Yeah, that was, I think we were trying to clarify what constituted whatever the value, because we said it was cheaper to finish out office versus like a restaurant or retail or whatever, and we were working on, I guess, figuring that out. And I don't know if the average cost would cover that. We discussed, like, I guess, how you would calculate the value, and the average cost of discussion being like, oh yeah, our whole bottom floor is going to be office, so that's X dollar amount, versus being retail, restaurant.
Yeah, we said the average build-up cost of the area, so
our
average is actually probably pretty high because they're almost all restaurants.
So that covers whether it's a restaurant or an office or.
The thing it does
it says
is
of the unfinished commercial space, so somewhere it's got to define.
I think what John was saying was what stops somebody from just saying it's finished and it was unfinished space, now it's unrented office space.
That is going to be the difficult part, the whole. And that was the whole trying to do the commercially viable, actually getting a business license portion of it. So rather than just finishing it, it's actually having a business in there. So that's why it's not based on finishing getting a CO for the commercial space. It's actually based on getting the business license.
So does it say in there they have to have a business license?
Yeah, somewhere I saw that. So commercially viable.
Oh, I see it right there.
Receive a business license for a commercially viable business.
Okay.
And again, there's going to be ways around these things, and we're just trying to do. I mean,
there's no way to plug every hole, because anybody can make a commercially viable that folds after 6 months. And
yeah, I mean, people may get one over on us from time to time, but it's just as much as we can. If we call people out, we will and everything like that. But
Nathan, did you have a comment?
I was just thinking every year when it comes to, like, we have a schedule of fees in our department in terms of like permit review and building plan fees that we adjust, and it's in ordinance, but it's a part of the ordinance that council can adjust every year because it's part of the budgeting process. So that average build out cost could probably be parlayed in with all that, because obviously that average build out cost will change over. Like, we don't want to set it in 2024 and have the same in 2034. So that could be something that falls into that same revolving schedule of fees.
And so in case people are wondering what we're talking about, people online, people out there, what we're talking about is we've had people say that certain commercial spaces are not being filled in certain residential buildings. With this, it encourages them because the developer or owner has to post a bond of 150% of what it would cost to build that whole thing. And it incentivizes them to get at least. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood what we were talking about.
150% of just the commercial space, right?
Yes, of just the commercial space.
It'd be nice if we can get 150% of the whole build out of the whole building.
So, any other comments or questions at this point? I think it's good. I think just the language,
okay,
like
so
John
the
said.
two things I'm doing are clarifying certificate of occupancy, and then the surety bond, 2 years of expiration.
When it is.
And when it, upon expiration of the bond will be called by the city, along those lines.
Yes, and just make sure.
'Cause that's what it means when a bond expires. We are the entity it comes to.
Okay.
So just so you understand how the process works, if a bond gets to the point of expiration, I get a letter from the company, the bonding company, saying, hey, has this bond been satisfied? If no, we get the money.
Okay. That's all we wanted to make sure is you get the money.
Yep, but we'll make sure that's very, very clear. Okay. We'll run by our attorneys to get that as tight as possible.
Question. Could the developer set up a business of his own, so like a leasing office or office or house cleaning company there, and then it may or may not survive, and then all of a sudden, boom, he gets the...
I would say yes in a way. So we already in the ordinance, we have a percentage that can be their leasing office. So they can't just have it as their leasing office. That wouldn't work because it's a set percentage they can have of the commercial be their leasing office. We already have that in there. So that's maximized already. But like a housekeeping, because they do have that concierge trash pickup service. Yeah, I mean, they could set up a shell company that, gets a business license and, there is a potential of abuse. There always is. This is just the best that we've come up with so far. If you can come up with any other language you think would help, I will absolutely incorporate it.
Well, I think this is in the right direction. I appreciate your efforts in addressing what we said last time. I mean, to fill the space and get commercially viable businesses in any place, that's what residents have been asking for. That's what the city needs. That's what needs to happen. And we appreciate the hard work and your efforts in coming up with that.
Excellent. So with that, I'm going to make those changes and then bring it back for an action item next time you guys see it.
Comments?
No, I was just going to say, I think that to his point about the shell company, I think that the trade-off, the risk of a developer doing that and getting caught by us, number one, is a risk. Plus, it's at the highest and best use of a space, probably not. And while I am 100% in favor in going forward with this, I think Jacob's done a great job. I do think it's super important to remember how low our vacancy rate is across the city. There's a misconception that it is very high, and it is not. It's one of the lowest in the state.
And again, at that, it was at, what, less than 7?
It's at 7% if you include everything across town, which includes things like the bingo hall and things like that that have been vacant for years. In student-driven buildings, it's 2.7%. Those are old numbers. I'm sure I'm off something, but it's the problem is that the ones that are vacant are very main thoroughfares and very visible.
Very visible. But good job in doing that and addressing the concerns that people have expressed. So I think we got a discussion item 2, discussion of maximum front setbacks and parking location requirements in CP2 district.
Yep. And this one here, so again, this is in the CP2 district. So this is our main highway commercial. This is our Tiger Boulevard and our 93 going to Central. The idea of currently the ordinance requires that the buildings be pushed all the way up to the front of the lots and that the parking be in the rear, which in a lot of our commercial, in pedestrian-oriented commercial, is definitely what you want. We've been running into some problems with drive-throughs and spacing of trees and utility lines of getting, because in a commercial district, the highway commercial, we almost think it might be more important to have like the tree line front road frontage rather than having the buildings right up close. So we're discussing the trade-off of getting rid of the maximum front setback. So we'd still have a minimum front setback, but we no longer have a maximum front setback. Because right now you can only push the building so far back. It would get rid of that, so you could actually push the building back farther in certain situations. And this would be, again, just for our highway commercial, our CP2 district, which is 93 and 123. Now, when we started diving into this, it's kind of evolved quite a bit because we don't want that for every use. So if these are uses with really big parking lots, your Walmarts and that type of thing, we're thinking we still probably want to have the commercial up front and the parking in the rear. We do not want to see that just big sea of commercial, sea of parking. So this started bringing in, you'll see this end note 8 if you're going through the use table. So for particular uses you'll see end note 8. So these are places that would have transportation-oriented development, like as in taxi and limo services, postal services, somewhere you might have large parking lots of fleet vehicles. We didn't want to have just big parking lots filled with fleet vehicles in the front. Again, you'd have to have those tucked around back. So then the end note 8 would still require the parking to be behind the building. And we started dividing it up by uses for that requirement. You'll see it for hotels, large commercial over retail over 6,000 square feet. And then as I get into retail over 6,000 square feet, we also saw this opportunity, instead of going through each individual, our ordinance was broken up that had, I don't know, well over 20 different retail broken out, which didn't make any sense really. I mean, retail was kind of retail. So we eliminated a lot of the, furniture stores, electronic stores, building materials. Instead of having them all broken out separately, we broke it out to retail of 6,000 square feet or less. So either you're over 6,000 square feet or you're less than 6,000 square feet. We really saw no reason why you couldn't sell furniture in a store downtown next to baked goods. Like there was no, it was just odd to have this many different retail broken out. Now this does bring up the discussion is, do you want large retail in, say, the C district? Right now, as this is written up, you could do, say, a Target downtown. Under our current ordinance, you can, just to be very clear. Under our current ordinance in the C district, we've talked about wanting a market downtown. It's not actually permitted today. But this would allow that. But the question is, maybe CM, do we want it? But maybe not actually in the C district. Do you want a large retailer right in does everyone know where the C district starts? Like Keith Street going down to Bowman Field? Do we want to have retail over 6,000 square feet in that district, or do we want to keep that in kind of the uptown and going the other way and the rest of commercial? Just a thing to be keeping in mind.
In the next plan, it was in uptown, correct?
Yeah, and currently in uptown, even though it says that we want a downtown realty, you can't do it. Like today, if Target said they wanted to come into, say where the post office is, or Dollar General, or Dollar Tree, they couldn't be there.
Even if they said that they wanted to put a 8,000 square foot mini market.
Yeah, you couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
Even though that's something everyone's been saying they want downtown.
If it were under 6,000.
Well, no, right now markets aren't allowed at all.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, markets today aren't allowed whatsoever in the district. This would at least allow it, but just telling you, that was just something when we started getting to the real nitty gritty of going through each individual item, we started seeing there were some real odd things, because you never, unless you start going through every single use individually, you don't always realize what is and what isn't allowed, because until somebody comes and asks me something, I don't know all what are the 400 uses in our use table until I look through the table. It's more about knowing where it is. But now I've actually gone through each one individually.
So this is saying all the parking in the back now?
Well, currently all parking is in the back. That is how it currently is.
Okay.
This says the only thing it changes is in the 123 and 93, parking would no longer be required in the back unless it was one of those ones called out with the end note 8.
Gotcha.
Where it's things that we didn't want, where they had large fleets of vehicles, say postal over, that type of thing, or very, very large parking lots. Retail over 6,000 square feet. We still felt that was appropriate to have the parking in the rear in those situations.
Any comments?
No, I think it's been discussed several times about, especially on 123 where the lake's at, as Abernathy Park begins to be redeveloped, having that as a viable commercial district for people coming in off of the water. So whatever we can do to assist with that.
Oh, and let me just read end note 8. With the exception of handicapped parking spaces, all parking and storage of vehicles and equipment will be behind the building. So handicapped, even in those situations, would still be allowed to be up front if it made sense.
No. So, but just to clarify, when we say up front, we're talking about the declared front of the building and the declared rear of the building?
Will be behind the building. So yes, so there's.
Well, I'm just saying about on the lake. So if you have a business that decides it wants to orient towards the lake,
right,
then the parking would be, if they decided, our front, we're going to front the lake. That's how we're going to draw it up and design it. So general parking in the back, handicap and other parking then around on the front, on the lake side of it.
Okay.
That's what I'm asking, is how, like, or is it just still, whatever, the main road is the front, period?
It's still gonna be the front no matter what. For commercial, you have one front and it is the main road.
Okay, so this doesn't, because I thought we had talked about doing something where we could allow businesses to address.
From a architectural point of view and from a sighting point of view, on interior of the lot, they will be encouraged to orient towards to the lake. It doesn't change the frontage.
Okay, I'm just, all right, just trying to make sure I make this make sense in my head. So the front is still 123, however it may be designed to look like the back of the building, and then the back of the building designed to look like the front if it's oriented that way.
I mean, you're going to be expected to have basically both of them looking nice.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at.
Caveats to this kind of thing.
Right.
Architecturally, you can have the front facing whatever you want, basically.
Right, okay.
But this is just from a sighting.
One before BAR.
This will have to go from BAR, correct?
But like your front door 911 address would be the roadside,
With the roadside,
not the lakeside.
correct. So
Right, I get from it. I was just trying to clarify, like, oh, are we gonna, if you're going down 123, are you gonna be staring at the back of buildings, or is that addressed?
No, they would still have to address it as a front.
Okay, but then they would also just, okay.
And they'd have to address the back of the front as well.
I mean, I agree with Greg. Anything we can do to facilitate it, like I mentioned at the last meeting, I've experienced.
It was a well-intentioned ordinance, and
Yeah,
the general, overarching planning is if you're trying to create a walkable community, you want to bring the buildings up close. The truth is 123 is slightly different than a true walkable community, and we were running into a lot of problems with like the tree coverage and stuff like that we wanted to, and everything else. So, there's just reality got in the way of lofty ideas, I guess.
And that's okay. Well, changing environments got in the way. I think sometimes people, and that's why we do these studies over and over, because changing environments change. And that's why we do it.
And one of the things I don't think people realize is that we are actually considered on the forefront of our zoning ordinance. People contact us all the time using us as examples. Like, we have a very advanced Board of Architectural Review, we have a very advanced rental housing ordinance. We are actually, like, people look at these other communities, we're actually the leader that communities follow, just to be very clear.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your work there. So, everybody good with that? To be an action item next time?
Okay. Now, this one is not as flushed out, to be very, very clear. The other ones we've seen before, so they're flushed out. This one is just our first more just kind of talking about it than anything. This is the discussion of changing up the buffers. And honestly, I kind of wish they'd stayed around, but I think the development we just saw is a good example. I think with the right buffer, something like that wouldn't be the end of the world, because I think it could be the transition that, I don't know if Eric was the most articulate in kind of presenting, to be honest, but there is some merit to saying that we do need to have commercial, something along the lines of townhouses, and then into single family. It's just, how do you make that transition work? And I think buffers are the key to that. And I think everyone kind of is looking at what he has currently from that development there and the buffer next to it. And I'm not saying that that is definitely the proper location for townhouses, but something you got to consider that we always talk about wanting diversification of housing types and transitional zoning. What is the proper buffer? I put in here the idea of 3 stories being very important. Once you start getting over 3 stories, having a greater buffer requirement. Because I think that in a lot of people's experience, 3 stories is about where you see at the top of your vision, you know, when you're walking around. Anything above 3 stories really does register as being tall, bigger. You know, 3 stories is actually, well, there's a lot of 3-story single-family houses around. So the idea that maybe we start breaking things up, saying that there is kind of a definitive point, above 3 stories may have a larger buffer, even if it is the same uses next door to each other, than we've previously handled in the past.
What
So
about like elevation changes?
that's
Like,
actually really important
'cause
too.
that was kind of strange, looking at some of those houses, I guess, what, on Monaco? I don't know, it was almost kind of
You know,
different.
I think you're 100% right on that. We have some language in the ordinance, but it kind of goes the other way, is that there, if something's kind of in a pit, then it doesn't have as big of a buffer, which makes sense too. But I think that I think that's something I want to look into, is discussion about if the grade is higher, is there a greater buffer needed? So maybe that whole height is a,
Like not 3 stories locked in, but maybe
yeah,
like
maybe it's a story thing or a height compared to the surrounding property, an elevation change, so.
Yeah, we haven't, this will give me a shot, but we haven't fleshed that out, but there are some parcels in town that are in a hole, and I know we have had a lot of discussion around the community about 7 stories and 5 stories or whatever, but Jacob and I have talked to just get to the surrounding buildings around that. There's 1 or 2, I won't name them, where you could probably go 12 or 13 just to get the roof line to match with the surrounding roof lines.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point.
It is something we need to calculate because
makes a big difference.
Land is that someone will propose it at some point.
So would you want the regulation to reference, say, the elevation of the right-of-way or the road or something along those lines?
In a way, but we're really, most of these situations, we're talking about the backside of the property, where it's hitting the neighboring properties.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be the elevation of the adjacent property versus the elevation of the structure.
Well, the elevation of the property where a zoning change occurs?
I don't know if it's always,
potentially.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
one
we do
I'll
by
throw
use
out.
usually. I think it's going to be set up by uses.
One I'll throw out that you all are familiar with, and it gets me shot, but the real estate office where the hotel's parking right now, if you think about the real estate offices on College Avenue, the real estate office is on College Avenue, and that hole is deep. I'm not saying that's not a 12 or 13 one, but the back of that property is significantly deeper than the front of that property, so you would have a situation.
If you don't know where that is, it's the leasing office for the one.
Yeah.
And if you knew it before, it was where Carolina Real Estate was.
Yeah, that's where Carolina was in my head.
Carolina Real Estate is where it was.
Across from the Baptist Church.
What is
Right
that
across
now?
from the Baptist
Now,
Church.
Yeah, that's, again, correct. That's allowed 3 stories, but 3 stories on College Ave might be almost 5 or 6 for the people in rigs behind it. So that seems like a situation where you might warrant a bigger buffer.
That's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, so this is all good discussion. This is going to help.
So how do you do that? How do you
I don't
write
know.
it in there?
That's the thing, is I've never seen an ordinance that addresses this.
Because for me, when I sit here and I rode past out here just talking about Cambridge, I have a hard time when we're talking about buffers, not having a buffer to protect that neighborhood. I have a hard time with that.
Well, there is a buffer, but it's just like...
It may not be big enough.
It may not be big enough, that's the thing.
So how do we make that happen without a planned development?
These are the nerdy things Jacob and I like.
No, it's in the ordinance already. Today, it would be a 15-foot C buffer. But the truth is, I don't know if a 15-foot buffer would be appropriate for a townhouse development like that going up against that neighborhood. I'm thinking it might almost be double that. It might be more like 25 to 30.
And so for me, if I was living out there, I would want at least 30 feet.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the avenue that we're thinking about going.
Where does screening come into that instead of the buffer?
Yeah, let me tell you what the buffer includes.
Okay.
Okay, so there's all different types of buffers. So let me kind of read off what they are. So the buffer has both a width, how wide it is, and then a screening of what's in it. So some of them have like solid walls and then vegetation, and some of them have a combination of the two. So right now, each buffer, so say an A buffer is,
It's on this page right here. So if you look at
so
your,
a Class A buffer is everything set up for linear 100 feet. So it'd be 3 upper story trees and shrubs or a continuous solid fence or wall constructed of brick or masonry, 36 inches minimum and 48 inches maximum, which is also kind of weird for a buffer to be 48 inches top, but in certain situations it's appropriate. But then there's other ones that have upper story trees requirements, understory trees, something I'm adding there, and then so either dense row or say a 6 to 8 foot tall fence. So it all depends on what we find is appropriate for that use and what we think a separation is going to be necessary. So a lot of times, you know, if it's between like a street, even if it's honestly, an example would be the backside of Dockside. Backside of Dockside probably shouldn't have been that giant wall. It doesn't look great. It probably would have been better served to be, say, a short masonry wall and then just heavy vegetation through there. That would have probably done a much better job of breaking off the appearance of that building and not having that kind of closed-in feel than what they had. But that is what the neighbors wanted, it's what they got. But
When you say backside, you talking about it separates the lake
Holiday
from
Avenue.
Holiday Avenue.
Yeah, Holiday Avenue. Holiday Avenue has an 8 foot tall masonry wall alongside of it now, where Dockside is. It's what the neighbors wanted to be taller, to be honest. But it probably would have been better served to have heavy vegetation back there rather than a solid wall. But
Yeah, the other side of the street has a 10-foot vegetation wall.
Yeah.
Probably behind the other businesses.
And you can't, yeah.
Functions well.
It does do a good job.
Okay.
Okay. Has to be replaced every now and then, but, or a combination of both. Okay, but I think the height though thing, I think is better, rather than just doing it by story strictly, I think grade is the smart move on that one. And we'll work on what that means exactly. I mean, a story is generally 10 feet. So it will probably be kind of a very similar approach, but it'll probably be, I guess, maybe roof line height or top of wall compared to, you know, elevation, something along those lines. But I can play around with that and, you know, work on that. But then in general, I think we're going to start going through and physically going out and measuring widths and playing around with what we think is appropriate. And also, I'm probably going to, we have a landscape architect on the BAR who's very talented. And a lot of this is going to be science-based of how much width you actually need to get these trees to full maturity, and base it rather than just an arbitrary number of you know, of width of the buffers. This is the density of plantings we want. What do we actually need to accomplish those plantings?
Yeah, because I guess if you're talking about trees, you gotta have enough space for that tree to reach maturity.
Correct.
Or you're defeating the whole purpose.
Well, and the other part with trees and things like that is there are certain people that would just call out the fastest growing trees, and all of a sudden you end up 20 years down the road with crepe myrtles with a disease that you have to cut every one of them down, and it doesn't work, and they turn into tree form instead of the way they were designed to be. So I think during that it's very important to pick what's healthiest and hardiest, even though it may take you more years.
And that is something our BAR has been extreme, and our city horticulturist has been a lot better about now than you can tell in the past. That is what's happened.
Right, so I can give you an example. I mean, where I am right now, the trend is to overplant.
Yeah.
And what happens is people cannot see that little juniper is gonna spread out down here through you guys in 4 years. And so then you create issues.
Yeah.
And so that's just my
This was a big discussion at the there's a gymnastics studio that just got approved by the BAR that's going to be going in, backing up against 123. And they were actually given a variance to do kind of a metal building on that side, which usually doesn't meet BAR standards, but given its location on 123 and just the use of a gymnastics studio, it's very hard to do that in anything besides a large metal building. So along where it hits the neighborhood, it's going to be all faced, but on the backside there, they chose to go with a vegetated buffer rather than making them do something different type of building construction. And it was very interesting to hear them talk about how the spacing, like you said, they're doing these, big, fairly fast-growing plants back there, but they are 10 feet apart from each other. And most of our plantings right now, this is calling for, shrubbery placed at 3 feet separation is our current buffer standard, which isn't going to work in the long run. So day one, it probably looks the best, but we're planning for the future. So
the question I have is, when they were required to do that, and these people are saying it looks all ugly and everything else, my guess is it was overplanted, it's grown up by now, and that's why it looks trashy. But if you want to find out the cost of how much it costs to come in there and get it down, it's cost prohibitive for that to happen.
Yep.
Right. Speaking from experience.
Okay, so I've actually got some good stuff already, but please, if you guys have any input on this whatsoever, let me know. Because honestly, plantings are not my forte. I'm going to be relying quite a bit on BAR for input in this. So this might not come back to you guys right away, because I'm probably going to bring it to the BAR next, once we get it kind of a little more fleshed out. Yep.
It just popped out at me right here, and I know there's not a lot of it and stuff, but in some areas it may make a big deal. It says where the adjacent land use is non-conforming, the depth of the buffer and live landscape materials shall be reduced by 60%. Is that something we need to look at? Because that's just a blanket non-conforming versus if it's non-conforming commercial versus non-conforming residential versus, Okay,
I'll circle to look at that, because that's just one of the existing standards.
It's existing standard. I just while we're looking at it, if we're looking at changing
I'll
stuff.
tell you exactly what that is. Most of our non-conforming, we almost have no commercial that's in a residential district. I kind of challenge you to find one, but what we do have is single-family houses in commercial districts, and the buffer requirements between a single-family house and a commercial is huge, as well it should be. But so it throws off development. And when it's a non-conforming situation where it's a house in a residential in a commercial district, that's in there. But we could absolutely specify that non-conforming where residential is in commercial district.
Yeah, because I could see, I could see a PD going in somewhere that.
PD doesn't abide by any of this.
That's, okay.
But I'm trying to think of a situation, because again, and non-conforming can't be the one going in, so it can't be a commercial going into a residential, because the buffers go on to what the new use is, what's coming in.
Right.
So this is always going to be a situation where it's the new development, so it can't be a non-conforming.
Okay.
But I think
non-conforming use, though.
But we can specify though, just to make sure we don't catch anything.
Is there any non-conforming residential like leftover? What would be like like duplexes, things like that, that would back up to something? So that would be like oh, this is a duplex, but now it's zoned R20 or R12. And that backs up to a commercial.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would. Yeah.
So that kind of thing, because it's like, oh, great, now I can put my big Walmart in, and I can shrink my buffer by 60% because it backs up to this duplex is on this R12
residential in commercial district.
Yeah, it took me a minute, but that's what I was trying to get.
No, that's good.
You could even say, if it's a grandfathered property for occupancy, does that make them non-conforming and therefore would be 60% less?
But I know there's some duplexes and stuff scattered around in residentials, and I know they're not necessarily back, but that's just what pops into my head is stuff like that, because it's always the very rare case that then pops up and then something happens and you're like, oh, well, we'll fix that now that it's happened, but it's happened after a permit's been applied for and they're locked into the old standard.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
That's a good point.
I think tying this all together, though, I think Jacob and I remain agnostic to all the development within the city limits of Clemson. But I do think a lot of the struggles we're having right now are just with buffers. Like, I think we heard that loud and clear tonight. Like, that's the, it's not necessarily always the use. Sometimes, a lot of times it's the density, a lot of times it's the height. But most of the time what we're talking about is separation. And as I think the developer adequately put tonight, we all know, and even some of the residents came up, land's at such a premium, this problem only is going to be exacerbated as we continue to grow. And we're going to continue to grow unless something catastrophic happens.
So, good point. Any other comments on this? So we'll move on to the next. And staff reports.
So much for talking before the meeting, just so everybody's aware that we had a little simple lot subdivision that's been completed up on Ridgeview. 3 lots were created, which, you know, is administrative, just as a kind of a refresher with the rules for people who haven't been through a subdivision development at the commission level. But minor, and the city has 3 levels basically of subdivision. The simple lot subdivision, which is no more than 4 lots without any roads being created. So it's splitting a piece of land. That can be done administratively, as long as there are no legally valid, the term the code uses is legally valid impediments to the split, which could be a contested title or something like that. It's something you document. It's not that people don't want to see it. So anyway, we had that one. It met all the rules. All of them are reviewed by engineering, stormwater, and of course zoning prior to starting. Utilities weighed in on it. So it gets a good look. So we've got the 3 lots that are being created there. Then we also have a minor subdivision, which is actually a small subdivision with a road being created. It's fairly, you won't see very many of those, but there could be a few of them. Typically what we've had come through over the last, I've been here coming on 8 years, the ones I've seen have been, you know, once you get to 9 or 10 lots, and then you've got up to 20 or 30 lots in that range, and you're going to have a street or 2, certainly in there, sometimes 3, depending on how it's designed and what the topography is. But minors and majors both come to the commission. You're bound by, of course, by the same rules as all. You have to, but you actually make the determination, have all these rules, you know, have the requirements been met. So that's it. But the smallest class, up to 4 lots, no street. We do the public notice, send the neighbors letters, and the whole thing. Signs were posted, and we just have completed that up. And there were no legal impediments to the subdivision, so we were bound to approve it. And so that's been wrapped up. So just as a way of a report, let's keep you advised when it happened. Depending, may have a couple of years, sometimes, maybe a little more sometimes.
And you said that was off of?
Ridgeview, it's, if you go in off of Rock Creek, off of Penwood, take the first left. It's on the corner.
Power lines there.
Any development, they're still subject to all the rules for sidewalks and everything. They put that on the plat just for public notice. Anybody that buys it is well aware that you know, they may have to be responsible for putting in a sidewalk along their frontage. So, all that's taken care of.
Any other staff reports?
I got a question. It seems to keep happening in Planning Commission. We're having a lot of stormwater discussions. I have a really good stormwater guy. Would it be good if he did like a 10-minute presentation? He can go fast. Just to tell you like what, that whole process is really defined in building code and stormwater code. And even tonight you heard about the runoff, and I understand why these are concerns, but it's pretty defined, and he could give like a 3-slide explanation if that would help.
I would love it.
Okay, I can do that. And then the other thing I'll just turn on is he'll kill me for volunteering him for that, but he'll do it. I'll wait a few days and then tell him. And then the other thing is, you heard tonight, but we are blasting comp plan stuff through social media constantly. We're emailing that stuff out. There's notices everywhere. I discussed with Andy today and her, we're gonna start going into doing some neighborhood meetings. Like obviously I'm gonna go to Westcott and do a comp plan informational meeting. There's been some chatter on social media that I've seen, like, hey, don't participate, city doesn't care. Couldn't be further from the truth. At least the 3 planners in here, we care a lot. I know you guys care a lot. And comp plan is really important for things like you heard tonight. Because I think Crowley said, you know, maybe that changes in the new comp plan. Maybe it doesn't, but going through this process and people participating is what causes that. So I was a little dismayed about what I heard tonight about people not knowing where that's available. It's the banner on the city website and has been for maybe 6 months at this point. It was live way before we ever got into the comp plan. So there will be additional meetings, but obviously you guys will be the first to know about that. But just keep talking about it every chance you get, because.
So my question is there a way for us to go ahead and post it on the video board out there as a reminder on the city side?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Let's do it.
And then the other thing I think I'm obviously going to do is Sarah, that works in our admin suite, she can track, you know, the engagement that we get on Facebook and all the other various things. And I'll just say from my perspective, and I always will be humbly wrong, I don't think it's from a lack of us trying to blast it out there, the participation we've seen. So again, just every time I get an email like I did today, thank you so much for this. I understand, please participate in this survey, you know, that type of thing. And that works sometimes, but.
So the other suggestion on the Facebook algorithms that I've learned recently is we probably need to do a pay boost for 7 to 10 miles. I would do 10 miles out here because we're 7.6 miles, and that would cover everybody, but you have to run it for 30 days. So when you look into it, they'll be able to tell you the impressions that you would get within each spin level. I would do that as well.
Okay, no, that's good.
Are you able to track how far into the survey it's being abandoned?
I'm not, the consultant is, and most people that start it finish it, because it's relatively quick. Like it's only like 10 questions.
It's really quick.
Okay.
Now there's a whole, like if you click I'm a business owner, there's a whole another range of questions for them. But it's good, and like we've even done a lot of folks. We put out a thing, like if you don't have, especially on the hang tags on the trash can, like if you can't use this QR code or you can't get to a website, email or come to our office and we'll hand you a paper copy. We've gotten 6 of those, 7. But yeah, I mean, the hang tags we know touched everyone, and they're annoying to get, and they're annoying for our guys to put on there, and expensive to print. But so we probably won't do that again because we've done it. But anything else you guys got any ideas? We're ready to rock.
Personally, I'll say I did not get the hang tag because my son did not bring it inside.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he just threw it straight up into the.
There's a lot of kids that just knock it in the trash.
So.
I got mine.
Yeah.
I got mine,
Now
and I
he
picked up
knows.
several of my neighbors. So you know.
And it might not be a bad idea either to talk to some of the civic organizations in town, so the 2 Rotary clubs,
exactly.
Sertoma Club in town, any of those groups to go out and those groups are always looking for presentations as well, or speakers.
True, yeah.
So it might be a good way to do that.
And I've got my canned speech where people throw tomatoes at me, so I can go do that for sure.
So, you know, another idea is to get the chamber to go ahead and include it in their newsletter.
Yeah.
In the next 4 newsletters.
Well, and quite honestly, I will say to you guys, because you're a super important part of it, we're at the point where we're narrowing down the survey portion of this thing to move on to the next. So I think in the future, it'll be more of like, let's go and just talk about what this is, what it's not. I think we heard tonight, or I do when I'm listening to these things, and I hear from a lot of people, and Jacob and I are very cautious about this, but I think there's an idea in the community that the comp plan is a Band-Aid that fixes every development problem within the city, and it's not that at all. It's a document guide for you guys and city council to follow when appropriate. That's basically what state law says. And then there are other pieces to that, like the white paper, that may take precedence at certain times, but essentially what we're trying to do with this comp plan is mesh all those things together. Take the good parts of the last one, incorporate the changes that have happened clearly since 2014, and the update in 19 and the white papers, and get it all together. So
what comes after the survey?
Right now, out of the survey and the edits that they discussed with you and council on the existing conditions report, there'll essentially be like a value statement of, so like the last one you clearly heard tonight was protecting existing neighborhoods. That'll be a portion of this one certainly, but are there other things that need to be there? So they'll, out of that, and then like a few bullet points to like focus on throughout, that'll come to us, for your guys to approve or deny are appropriate, and then move on from there. But there are meetings, again, joint meetings scheduled. Will be joint meetings scheduled with you guys and council to vet those things out.
So anything about planning commission at council meetings? Okay. And you,
The proposed rezoning, did not go forward.
Yeah, the proposed rezoning was denied, I guess.
Yeah, I can kind of give a little bit on that. So the council recognized the need for trying to take care of these non-conforming issues over there, and they would rather than until the comp plan is done, they're probably not going to rezone anything. It was the general feeling right now. But they want to do a stopgap measure of making sure grandfather right properties can be restored. So we are back to an ordinance that'll be going from you guys to guarantee that grandfather right properties can be rebuilt in their current form.
So, for instance, the most obvious example that we know right now, Bixby can't be rebuilt because the zoning, the height was reduced after the building was constructed.
Yeah.
So,
Dockside can't be rebuilt today. The use is totally not allowed. Until that ordinance. Until this ordinance gets put in, yeah.
So where this becomes a problem for Jacob especially is every year, or these things sell constantly. This is just how the nature of student housing is. So when their bank's looking for a finance letter, they're digging through insurance and title work, and can this be rebuilt is a real big question for those guys. Do we care if they make money reselling a property? No, but every time they do, it adds to the tax roll, certainly. So it's a circular problem that we need to fix for sure.
and I think the part that what I was trying to allude to today is we're going to have to go back through and help. You have money in the budget to do a zoning study with a comprehensive plan to make sure everything helps you. Because I don't know how you keep up with 22 plus a regular one. No, I don't.
No, Jacob's right. Our zoning code is very robust in that it covers everything. Sometimes the problem is that I'm in my office hollering at Jacob, where's this at? And I'm the director and I can't find it. So I don't expect anyone in the general public, Art and I run to Jacob's office all the time to ask him stuff. So what we want is, we don't necessarily change anything or take anything out. It's more exactly like the comp plan. We just want it better structured so that it is, when Matt's building something, he's like, this is this zone and these are the 10 things I gotta do. And that's easy.
But the PDs, I mean, there ain't no going back to fixing them. That is, we have literally a wall bookshelf filled with all the PD ordinances. Every single time somebody calls me about anything, and I mean like anything, putting up a shed in their backyard, I have to read through that whole ordinance to figure out what they can and cannot do. It's a pain.
Yeah. And you know, that's part of our job is to make sure that words matter and that the words are right. And that's why we keep saying, you understand CO, some people understand comp plan, comprehensive plan. What I was trying to do is to educate some of the public who does not know what that is. So, anything else? Anybody got a motion to make?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn for the evening.
Second? Thank you. Yes, all in favor? Aye. Thank y'all very much. Sorry for the long meeting tonight, but